One logo like
Yes, we did. He was whatever. Yeah, but he's smart. Practice.
no, we're like someone in the following. After identity is a son, I'm like
I'm here all day.
Go start my. Board meeting. She opened that PDF and 600 pages.
Doing one of the presentations of the reality capture. You see, let's do today. I'm skipping. Sorry. I need a draft today. All right.
Good morning, everyone. It's a big event today. We tried to host a workshop during the service week in March. We need more time to prepare workshop, so that's why we used today. You can see the workshop is sponsored by NCWS Foundation. We got an award from NCWS Foundation, and also we got great support from FSMS. First, let me ask our department chair.
His name is Angela.
Our department chair, Dr. Kaiser, to give a welcome speech. One thing I want to let you know, the workshop will be lively streamed to the FAU using a public account. First time we do this, Dr. Kaiser.
Thank you, Dr. So I really appreciate. Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
On behalf of the department, I would like to thank you that you attend this exciting workshop between the geomatics program at the Florida Atlantic University and the industry. We are really excited because, first of all, is the first one that we are organizing in Jupiter, and would like to keep it this annually, every spring to have it. So also we are really happy because a lot of students from the program will be here shortly, and we will share, we will share the discussions about the geomatics industry, academia and the jobs that will be out there. We have set up, Dr. Su is going to tell you a little bit later about the agenda. We have, a breakfast and the luncheon, some logistics, the bathrooms is outside on the right, and I would like also, on behalf of the geomatics program, to give us a feedback at the end. How did you like the workshop? How do you like to see different, and how we can improve for the future? We are really excited that we have Dr. Nagaraj and Dr. Su in our group, that they are working really hard to keep the geomatics program in the level that is the level of keep that as the best geomatics program as we know in the East Coast. The department has around 400 students, good number of geomatics students, around 60. We have two campuses that we're working on. One is in Boca Raton, one in Jupiter. And also, as always, we'd like to thank you, the industry, the support. We are getting the work from NCEECS, and we are looking forward to continue. Dr. Su?
Thank you, Professor. Let me quickly give an overview of the workshop. So we have about 30 registration. You can see most of them are our current students, including civil engineering and geometric engineering students. And we have professor from UF, from FAU, and also industry leader and professional board member are here. So this workshop, another thing for professional servant member, if you need to get a continuing education credit, so make sure that you scan and check in using the online form. So why we have this workshop? Because we use AI every day. We have process on drone mapping, geospatial and AI. We actually know that there is a gap between the application ethics and the real world between the rapid developing AI technology. So we want to gather the opinion from everybody, from industry, from regulator, from university educator, and from our young students are exposed to AI briefly. I mean, they use it every day. A few themes related to the workshop: new technology, including drone, geospatial AI, and regulation, new trend. We have 3 sessions. First session is panel discussion, followed by the individual oral presentation, and then we have demonstration. So that is the overall schedule. Everybody should have a copy of agenda with you. The first session will be panel discussion. Moderator will be Dr. Blocher. We have panelists, and you come on here. So we have a discussion about 10 different questions.
It seems like a way more fun, not rules.
Oh, listen, that's just some stuff.
I think I'll stand up here. I don't need smiles, we're gonna get you all in camera backwards. The TV user, ashes on this side. Makes me suspicious of it. There we go. There we go. Supposedly there are questions up there. Not that I'm going to use. Curveball. Exactly. All right.
Well, you can give it a little bit, and the same really.
Okay.
So what is the duration for this session? So
30 minutes.
30 minutes also.
Talk really fast. All right. I think we should start up. All right, so brief introduction. So this is Jim Sullivan, wave to the audience out there. So he's the director of land surveying at BGE. You are a board member for the land surveyors and soil survey board, okay? We all know Dr. Nagarajan. Wave to the audience that's out there.
Oh, right.
Wave to the virtual. Okay, Rick Price, who's been doing stuff for a long time here. So you're still with now, are you still working?
Yeah, I have my own company there.
Oh, you have your own company. I was gonna say, that's
I'm
not.
past president of Ephesus.
Okay, perfect. All right. And then we did not put these in order. All right, Brian, wave to the audience. Okay, so Brian, he is the vice president of geospatial at Keith. He just hired one of my students. Jenny will be fantastic. If you need more students, we have. Okay, I will butcher your name. So you are Vente. UMass. Okay, see, I wouldn't have gotten that. So he's the assistant professor at UF. Sorry about that. And we all know Ramesh, who's a professor here in our department. Okay, so everybody knows everybody. It killed 5 minutes of that.
That's
All right. So here's the first question. It's not on the list. So I think we should have this.
So I think it's that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let's have open this.
Now you can't use ChatGPT. Now, Nagaraj has got.
Yeah.
It's gonna use the AI thing.
I'm adding a earphone.
But on a serious note, the first question is, in looking at where we're at right now, what do you think are the most likely tools that we are dealing with that are going to have a significant change towards AI utilization? Go.
The tools we use now just gonna get better, just automatic extraction.
But me, that anything related to extraction, mapping and all that have been there. It is going upward, there's no question about it, but the LLM and the agentic AI, that's sort of the kind of big leap, I would say, in the last few years. Which at least the engineering and the geospatial community has not adapted yet, because it's really a changing stuff. I believe that for a lot of the tasks that we do today may rely on the skills.
Rick? The AI tools that are out there right now in my queue as a servant, first of all, they're up and coming and they're useful to a point. Problem that I see and how it's going to be used is people are relying on it too readily without having checks and balances. And that's gonna become a critical issue. And I think that in all, in my opinion, is gonna be the issue is how do we maintain the accuracy that we have by accepting these new tools that are up? And the students are more likely to use the tools because they're exciting, but the managers are gonna have a harder time checking the work because of they will not know the tools as well as the students do. So I see that as a problem.
I mean, to jump on both Rick and Jim's comments here. Data acquisition is coming harder and faster. The need to be able to house that and manage that data is gonna be significant because the data becomes greater and our systems become slower. And as we go more into the AI, better ways to what Rick said, build in the AI's validation and quality assurances that are automatic. So as AI auto feature extraction becomes greater, better ways to assure the manager, in Rick's case, that is correct. So better QA, QC in the algorithms themselves and better ways to manage the data.
So I'm the odd dog here because I'm more on the computational data side of geospatial, not the engineering and survey. So I'm also going to the agentic AI revolution that's going on. That's going to be, and it is like taking a lot of changes that are like super exciting. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing as like at the forefront right now. And obviously, like I share the same concern, like what's going to happen to quality, how do we make sure that they are reliable? So yeah, that's what I'm.
I think I agree with all the panel members. The first issue is that we have a lot of data in, which is coming in both structured and unstructured ways. But the way AI is developing in terms of its applications, we need to first start thinking about how the answers, what we can provide, and how engineers can take that information and then validate that first. So it's like Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So we need to start looking at the data in a different way. But there's also another move where you cannot use generic tools for our engineering applications. We should start looking at bringing our own LLMs and train on our data so that they become better. And the final point is that most of the agentic AI or generative AI stuff that is available right now, they are not up to date. So they have been trained for the last probably 6 months back data, 1 year back data. So again, we need to start thinking about how we can have our custom built applications usage in AI or surveying as civil.
Okay, so that kind of leads into the second point that goes to the first couple of questions we were suggesting here. So we're hearing data acquisition is the big place. So having said that, all right, we have, how are we going to determine which of the tasks we're gonna go ahead and let the machines do, and which are the tasks that need to be retained by professionals on our side? So whoever wants to go first with that. Fine, we'll go back.
The initial part is the data curation part, the quality assurance part can be done by AI, the initial part. Once it goes through that part again, it means a continual check. It's not that, what it is doing, because a lot of these AI, they hallucinate, they're trying to give crazy answers. So we need to be very careful about the initial part. And I think in engineering as well as in surveying in geomatics area, first part is how to deal with structured and unstructured data when it is coming from the field. Maybe AI can be used at the first level to clean up the data, identify any outliers or any issues. Then we get the clean data, then we can have a personnel looking into that data, and then move on to the next step of the design.
I like what you said, that maybe AI can be used for this and that, and I think that's the case, like maybe, we just don't know yet. So like, that's why these workshops are super important, because first, I think we as a community need to define what we think is acceptable and what isn't, and then we can evaluate the tools, and then we can see if actually they perform to a standard that we think is acceptable. But everything is changing so fast that it's just like difficult to keep up. But I think academia, industry, basically professionals who know like what we need to use for are the ones who should be defining standards.
I think, there is no division of what should be on their licensure or shouldn't be. It's another tool. Some of us grew up in, yeah. So they totally
Very.
Some of us grew up with rooms twice as big as this, filled with hand drafters. Some of us grew up in the profession, yeah. That's why I elbowed you, because you and I are the same. Came through, 5-person, 6-person, 10-person field crews. Now we're doing 1-person field crews. The technology is always going to be changing, but the overall umbrella from a professional standpoint, doesn't matter what tool you're using, you got to use it accurately.
What I see is, across the country, you're seeing these data centers build up. And they're all getting ready to go full blown on creating these data centers that handle all this data across the internet. So
Machines are happy with
the
that.
machines are happy, yes, but what's happening is they use so much electricity that they're stopping some development of housing and things like that because of the amount of electricity they're gonna use draws from the other part. So the amount of data that's coming in is just phenomenal. I mean, the project I did just 2 years ago, we had 10 terabytes of data coming in just in a little over a year. Trying to store that and handle that data, organize it, make it useful was a task in itself. So that part AI will be able to handle. Be able to figure out how to handle this amount of data. The idea is that making it useful and making it people aware that it exists, where it exists, how to access it. Those are all features that to me, engineering and surveying especially are going to need other tools besides what they use today. AI is going to help with that, but it's also going to hinder. The data centers themselves will be great. We can get the grid out there. Bigger, better, we'll shut out. I don't think solar energy is going to be the issue. We're going to have to go to big in order to get the amount of power. See that development. But long.
I mean, the way I see it is, there's no question that AA is gonna change a lot of the way we think. But the rule over thumb, and my perspective is there a human judgment part involved in this process? Right, so that's kind of where I would not 100% trust AI research. I would always use that as a tool to make my job easier, make my decision making easier. Otherwise, again, nobody can get away without using AI. We all use AI, I think every single one of us use. But how we use is where the question is. So everything, for example, even places, everybody talked about data acquisition. That, not today, last 10, 15 years, that process has been extremely automated. You have the data, how you make sense out of data, you have to capture them manually, what kinds of tools are available, that has been always the challenge. Now with all these techniques, made it easier. In my opinion, then LLM and agentic AI are the new things. In my opinion, everything else have been there, they have been changing, but not as much. So to answer your question within the task, but I think that, in my opinion, human judgment would decide where I would use. Where, again, it's not completely, I'm not going to use AI at all for this the task, but the level of involvement of AI would be less or more based on the task.
I agree. Each task of a project or a thing should be overseen, reviewed, checked. But I think it's gonna be more reports instead of just the old way of just looking at every detail of everything. So be more red flags, kick out reports and overseeing that. Now, me as a professional, it's not gonna do that to every little thing, but I'm gonna trust the people that I've trained to do that along the way and then oversee them.
Okay, so it kind of leads to another question that was on here, so. Yes, go back to trust but verify. So, and we had this, we may talk more about this later today. So, and I'm assuming this is with the surveyor licensing board as well. So you are responsible for the output. So engineers go ahead and use some sort of software package, AI or otherwise, do a structure. You're responsible for understanding how that software works and if the answer is correct. That's a board requirement. And I'm assuming, especially as we move into the world of AI, which is a black box, how are we going to address this issue? Like Nagarajan says, we're all going to be responsible for it. It's a black box. So how are we going to deal with the challenges with licensure, doing the professional due diligence and word that you only hear from an attorney who doesn't think you did it? Okay, how are we going to deal with those potential conflicts when you are in fact dealing with a black box? Start with the board member.
The rules don't state how to do something, just what it is. So you can use whatever tool you want, but it's my professional. It's my responsibility as a professional to oversee the outcome, the process all the way through. So the board doesn't matter as far as that goes.
How about you, as a professional with your license before you?
I always say whatever's best way to get to the deliverable. So I'll use whatever tool I need that comes out with the accuracy that I want for a specific project.
So how do you know it's correct?
You have checks and balances along the way. You have to do some ground truthing. You have to do some reports along the way. So you get those reports, you get those findings and at the end of the day, you look at the end product and you verify. Well, cite.
Sometimes you have to think outside the box. We're doing this more and more as we go forward. I know with LiDAR data, collected a lot over the years, I had mobile LiDAR data done for me using my own control. And come to find out, after sending out a final product, sent a field crew out to do normal surveying, and they came up with a difference in point and elevation. Here I'm thinking the whole thing was done because it was an automated process. I used a sub-consultant for doing the mobile LiDAR. They use my control. So what I did was I had to figure out a way to prove which one was right. So I took something that I know has a standard to it. NOAA goes out every year, especially when it's hurricanes, it reflies an area LiDAR. So I just grabbed some of the free aerial LiDAR that was within 2 years of my project. I overlaid it on top of the scan data from the mobile scanner, and I immediately saw where there was one control point. I was off by a foot. So being able to figure out a way to do that check, but you feel comfortable, you know where the problem is, no way, is a critical issue. So like I said, you gotta think outside the box, and if you don't know the software, you don't know how to use it. You don't have some expert in your office that knows how to use it, and you feel comfortable with them, then that's the issue. It's not gonna be just up to the licensure, it's gonna be up to the technicians, that they know enough about it to do their own stuff. And tell you if they find a problem. So this licensure is the final product. I'm responsible, the buck stops here with me because I signed it. But you have to have confidence and the technology that's out there. When you buy it, you know, with somebody.
Yeah, so a little bit. Scanner. So I'm gonna flip that. Maybe, no, not in a bad way.
I wasn't saying that.
No, I know, and I'm just gonna flip the premise of. We're kind of approaching AI as this scary tool. And my compatriot here, we've been around these black box tools for 40 years. GPS was a black box tool. Where did that come from? We've just used all these tools. We'll figure out a way to Rick's point. It's like, okay, something didn't work. I got to think outside the box. How do I fix this? Same thing happened with total stations, robots, data collectors. When we first came up, there was no such thing as a black box data collector. So we got to stop thinking that AI is a scary, oh my gosh, it's going to ruin our profession, because old school said data collectors were going to ruin the profession. GPS was going to ruin the profession. And we just had to figure out different ways of doing it.
I think the key is to retain some sort of control. Yeah. So if it's data issues, then I must not relinquish the ability to have access to the raw data. I must know how that will generate, what processes it went through. So if there's a question about accuracy, then I have a way of going back and figuring out what went wrong. Just a couple of weeks ago, I read about Planet, like the commercial company who has these satellite constellations. And they are putting AI on the satellites so that they can just like transmit the detections. But I think that's where the issue is, because if that's the case, then we don't know what the base data, what the imagery was that the satellite used for detection. We just get an insight. But how am I going to verify the insight? Maybe there are some applications like, commercial stuff, counting cars, that's fine. For science and engineering, not so much. So I think if we retain the ability to go back and verify, then we should be fine, and we should not be afraid of the black box in that case.
I think the main focus should be on, as you said, the quality control. In simulation in other areas, they say human in the loop. So you need to have a human looking at each and every prompt that is provided and something that is also very. But one more thing, what is going on in the AI field is the prompt engineering and also explainable. So next time, when you get a design completely done by an AI, you can always ask AI, how did you get to that reasoning? Then we can always use a human to check that reasoning whether it's right or not. The other thing, as I said in the beginning, that we cannot rely on generic AIs to do the designs for a specific purpose. We need to have our own LLMs, the foundation models that are available, the public foundation models that are available. You can take them and then you can start training them according to your profession. And then you can get the maximum benefits.
So that the way I see AI is like a buddy, probably knows way more than me, right? Not always, I don't always agree with it. Sometimes like I bounce off ideas, again, when I say that, again, it is often a misconception, my point of view. AI is put in one box.
Very you.
Yes, it is. Honestly, I get way better ideas when I say something to AI. He says something, then kind of it warms me up to think. But I don't really agree with it, but like that kind of makes me to think beyond, right, sometimes. So that's how I see it. But again, as I said, I don't always agree with it. Wherever the human kind of judgment point is there, which is almost on all cases, I think we have to be extremely cautious.
I think just one last thing on this is that we're
No,
back
go.
to your buddy.
Yes.
Alright, so as in surveying, when we get done with a job, we have our team working on a specific project. We get done with it, I take the job, I hand it off to another registered guy. Just to give it a once over, because we're so used to looking at it, we're gonna oversee some mistake that we. And just having a second set of eyes, this is where I think AI might be able to help. On checking the final product, too. At least give you some input, so I think that might be a case where we have AI trained to look at
Yeah.
specifics, maybe.
Yeah, one of the serious issues with it is in academia, we know that we always need to know the source, right? AI, in many cases, it cannot provide source, so which is a problem. It will trust, and also it's changing, as we all hear that, like it's continuously changing, it's learning more. So today, maybe for I don't know how long, like we should always use it with caution, right, which is what everybody agreed as well. I don't know. Remember one thing I was gonna say,
One more thing, so he's talking about having source. This has been a problem with GIS since it's come out, GIS metadata. The metadata behind each of the source, who collected it, how it was done, all that information, all this new stuff from AI has to have some sort of metadata with it. So you can look at at least the metadata and see how it was collected, who made the final decision, things like that. I think that's another tool.
So it kind of leads to the next question, which might be our last question because the discussion has been good here. So we're hearing peer review stuff, trust but verify, data sources. A story I'll tell you guys later about that. So we're looking at students that we're going to teach today, and so a few years out, they're going to be your problem, 3 of you guys' problem, and then 10 years out, okay, the technology continues to evolve. So looking at the surveying and engineering education, what is it that we should be trying to convey to students so as they enter the work world and as they grow and develop in the work world and AI tools become a bigger issue? What should we be teaching them to help them with that? I don't know, whoever wants to jump
I'll jump in first. To me, it's very, very simple. It's proven. Just teach them to prove their conclusions. How did you get there? Why did you get there? What was your thought process? So just prove it.
I don't know too many students or professional people that are good at everything, right?
There's Zach.
So Revit, Civil 3D, ORD, Pix 4D, TBC, such no one's like good at everything. So you end up getting silos sometimes. And so you never know what you're good at, what you're doing a lot of until you're in it 5-10 years. So I always encourage people to have a general base of things until you find out that what you're championing on.
I'll go back to some basics. I'm a practical person. And I look at things in a practical way. When my son got his license, he hadn't done a lot in surveying. And he wanted to go on board with me. I told him, no, sending you to another firm. I said, and I told the other firm, I said, when you somebody, please hire him, but put him out in the field. I said, I want him to be put through the ringer. Go out to the swamp, cut the line, do the worst jobs out there. Because mainly what that's gonna teach him is that when he gets a job where he's in a responsible charge of something, people are gonna know right away, the field crews will know right away if you have to do. They will not respect any idea or any decision you make without that practical experience. So I would encourage any student coming in, and it's best to do this in the intern stage, is work on a field crew if you're going surveying, work in specific projects if you're going into engineering. So that they're out in the field, they see what's kind of happening physically. And I think that's critical experience. Seeing what's actually done, I think that is missing. Because when I get a student out of University of Florida or University of FAU, first thing I find out is they don't know everything. It's going to take me a year of my time to get them up to speed so I feel comfortable with any decisions they make. And a lot of firms do not want to invest that time. They're looking for somebody coming out of school that already knows a job. And that's a difficult task for a business person to hire and say that the realization is I'm gonna have to invest a year of my time in them. So I think that's one thing that's overlooked, especially for graduates.
So I like your idea of like pushing them through the ranks. They need to learn it, but I think we need to go back one step and we need to start that in the classroom when we are training them. So I teach spatial statistics, data analysis, and the thing is that they can solve the most difficult problems at ease if they use the chatbot or even more advanced technology. So I'm making them again do everything by hand because I want them to understand and want them to be able to like do that by hand. And once they have that experience, then they can start making their own lives easier by using these automated tools. But until they get to that point, somehow we need to figure out a way to make them do that and be able to also like evaluate, figure out if they are like using these tools in the classroom. So it's a challenge. It's not worked out fully yet. It's going to be interesting to see in 5 years when the first generation of these students go out in industry. So I think they have a lot of work to do, both sides of this spectrum, to figure out a good way to overcome this, because AI is going to stay here. So we just need to learn to get the best out of it, in my opinion.
You, I think you said this before, one of you guys did. Most of the students will come out of school ready to do the job. It's a year of on-the-job training. It's over 2,000 hours of just learning. But you teach them the basics, right? So you teach them to learn, and I think the students that know that can get better over time. And I think that's what college does for them.
Add something to it as well, because the technology is changing so fast, and to kind of even reference here the friends as well. Every field is going to be different. In the sense like as the technology is changing, we will start to see more and more black boxes, as you were saying. So, be an engineer or surveyor, we need to pound on the basics. Right, so there's no way we can get away. I teach all the courses, that doesn't mean that I know everything about it. For example, when we talk about even career-based ranging, the signal processing aspect of it, I don't know the details. I kind of barely touch on them because I'm not a signal processing guy. How really things work behind, even GPS, you talked about it. I know the idea, but I don't know how it works. So meaning, everybody, we have to accept those black box solutions as long as this professional, you know the basics, what's being done. Right? So.
Last thing I want to say is that one of the things that's lacking from when Brian and I came up to the ranks is mentorship. So the mentorship from the professionals that are out there, whether it's an engineer or surveyor, that's sadly lacking. So these students need to have somebody that they can consistently go to after they get in the zone. And they have to look for companies that are willing to do it. Because that is where they grow exponentially in their knowledge and their experiences, having somebody help them mentor them through it. Well, that's been lacking. I mean, I came up through a mentor program. But I realized the value of the education. My son went through them, all my kids went through 4-year degree program. And the idea is that they get such a broader knowledge by doing that, of what's out there, what's coming. The other people out there is the manufacturers, like Earl, Trimble and Leica. Those are coming out with the AI tools and the instruments and things that we're going to be using. So I think getting funding through them, if they're not already doing it, for helping to develop those mentorships and on their own equipment. So I think that's another thing.
Is that one final one? Yeah. Basically, AI and all digital literacy is important for our students right now. So they need to first of all understand what are the implications of use of AI in their courses as well as the future. That's very important, and I think the AI should creep into the curriculum very soon. And a lot of courses don't have data analysis, or even students have never heard about AI in many courses. So we need to introduce that. And the final thing is that the licensure boards should also start asking questions to the students about the ethics of using AI in their profession, in terms of their design and how they are going about it. So then the PE exam, the FE exam, all those things should also contain some kind of testing for the students, that how ethically, legally they are using AI. They're learning as
Okay, we need to stop here, so big hand. Dr. Shu, you can have the controls.
I actually prepared a long list of questions. We have a long time.
I asked 3 of them.
We have to move on, and we have interesting topics from the individual oral presentation. The first oral presentation will be from Mr. Brian Merritt. Yeah, come back again. Let me load your. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. It's pretty heady information there. That was awesome. So now we're going to kind of continue the track a little bit in how you can use AI a little bit with drones and GIS as well. So I'm going to do my shameless plug, right? A little bit about my firm itself. In case you don't know, most of you do, 60+ years in business. Founded by a surveyor. He actually has his own monument now in Martin County, just kind of super cool. 5 offices across the state, 200+ professionals. We do it all besides the geospatial world, which is my world, which is survey mapping and subsurface utilities. We handle everything from traditional stuff to LiDAR to GIS to vacuum excavation and EMR. So we have about 65 staff all in across the 5 offices. We have geospatial folks in all 5 offices across the state. So some questions for you all. Who here has worked with drones, UAS? Not a lot. Wow, impressive or not impressive. Who's worked with GIS? A lot more. Very interesting. All right. Who has worked with AI of some sort? Okay. Half. Who's worked with machine learning? A few more. And what do we know is the difference between AI and machine learning? Thoughts, comments? I'll define it in a minute.
Machine learning is a subset of AI.
AI is that umbrella term, right? Means a lot. But machine learning, right, is data focused. We're gonna focus on a certain thing, a certain aspect, a certain algorithm, a certain pattern. Hopefully imitates human learning and continues to learn. That's the goal of machine learning. So how do we apply that in the GIS realm? So we can utilize machine learning for object detection, image classification, change detection, and feature extraction. You heard the panel talk a lot about feature extraction in AI. So this is a component of it, and you can apply it in GIS itself. And actually, Esri has a great tool set of deep learning tools that you can apply to a lot of different things. Like we said, object detection. So whether it's vehicles, buildings, solar panels, whatever you can think of. Pixels, classification, polygons, segments, as well as just different imagery and point clouds. So I'm going to give you some examples, some practical examples, and this was some work I did with my previous firm before I came to Keith. So the goal here was to understand the use of a parking lot or a series of parking lots. It was a hospital campus. So how do we do vehicle counts? How many vehicles are in parking lots A, B, C, and D at a certain time? Because what they wanted to do was kill a parking lot and build a building in the parking lot. So do we need to remove the parking lot? Do we have the capacity? How do we move the capacity? Those were all the decisions that were part of it. So what we implemented was we would fly the entire campus photogrammetry wise with a drone every 30 minutes and take a snapshot. And then run it through Esri's deep learning tools to teach it to pull polygons that are vehicles. And then to classify that data and then bring it back into a data set. Which kind of looks like this. So where now you can build a dashboard where you can start looking at hour by hour, lot by lot, where the flow is. Once you have the data and have it managed correctly, you can now start making informed decisions. So once this dashboard and the data set was built, then the information comes cleanly and fast. So once we taught everything, it was a function of uploading the photos, all the photos, and say, go. And we get this kind of information out of it. Kind of a flip on that a little bit is we're not in California, which is a good thing. But certain cities in California tax on pervious versus impervious surfaces. All right. So how do they check that? How do they check that you've added stone or concrete to your backyard? You're not going to allow them in your backyard. So the city flies and uses fixed wing aerial imagery in this case to support that effort. So building an AI platform using annual photography and running it through a change detection learning algorithm, they're able to create the, if you take the NDVI or the normalized differential vegetation index, put it through machine learning classification, shove it through a summary and get a final product, they can do a change detection of year over year, which that means Mr. Price added a lot of concrete. So we're going to raise his taxes because now he has a lot more impervious surface. So. He didn't do it. So you can see here where, you know, we can pull out the areas, the excluded areas, the impermeable areas. The vegetated areas, and then just do a comparison, and then they can run that through their system. And send a bill out to the individual property owner for an increase or decrease in their bill. Which is also very, very interesting. So real quick. AI machine learning, you customize that, right? You make it work for you, how you want to think, how you want to pull data. And we said this, you heard it in the earlier segment, trust but verify. Trust but verify. You always have to trust but verify all the time. You can use it for an array of tasks. It's repeatable. That's the nice thing. You can do something year over year over year with the same model, and it just keeps chugging along. And for the students and everybody here, be creative. You don't know what it can do for you until you try something, and then you'll figure it out. So that's expanding the box, expanding your thoughts, expanding the profession. And that's it for me, really quick.
We're clapping because you kept it quick.
Any question to?
Questions, comments?
I like the idea of the impervious mapping.
Unless you're being taxed for it. Exactly.
How often that particular imagery is obtained?
Annually, yeah. So, healthy.
Thank you. The question goes back kind of what was being discussed earlier about this. You're using using a piece of software to determine X area. What happens? Is there any ground? Field crew checking? What's the QA QC to say, hey, it's X amount of square feet,
Yeah.
it's not?
Yeah.
Is that done?
That is not done in that city case. So what happens with that though is you as that homeowner, you go, oh, I just got a giant bill. You dispute that, then there can be a physical inspection of it, because now you have to allow the city, the town to enter your property. Right?
Yeah, different take on that same process. We did that for the city of Oakland Park, probably 8 or 9 years ago. It's the same process. We went through the GIS, got our pervious and impervious. But we found out, because the city had never used any type of software, they were just charging people. All they had was an address, but we couldn't figure out how they were charging them. In that same process, we found out that there was over 400 parcels they weren't even charging at all. So we found a revenue stream. Well,
That didn't exist. Yeah, it's amazing. You don't know, in my organization, we have a great saying, you don't know what you don't know. And that happens too much in a lot of municipalities. And government agencies don't know what they don't own, just hard to understand. So. More questions, yeah.
I have one question. So do you think that in the near future, for example, 5 years or so, we will use human-right robot to do surveying job outside without any human working with that robot?
Yes.
That's right. We kind of have that now with the dog, the Trimble dog, kinda a little bit, but I don't see that happening. That's just a personal thing. I don't think there's the stability of movement in a robot that can happen.
Not only that, but I don't think the neighbors would like it either.
We just saw this incident happen in the marathon in China.
Oh, yeah.
The robot just fell down for a small obstacle and then it broke into pieces.
With these
Small obstacle.
hundreds or millions of dollars, destroyed.
Earl had a comment.
Well, I was just gonna say along those lines, I mean, you brought it up a while ago, data collectors versus we started with calculators and field notes. So there's a level of that already. Most companies today use robots. for their total station. So, will it be full-fledged? No, I don't think, I think the human factor in surveying, is always gonna have to be there. But we are implementing, robotics and data collector stuff already, which is making it allowable to be a one person.
So the job for surveyor is still very secure.
Yeah, absolutely. But some of
I
that,
still want to know that.
some of that's also being transferred instead of the robot from the field to the office. So where now we can go out and collect a lot of data really fast. And then the surveying is actually in the office in a, nice air conditioning, safe room where they start picking point and start pulling data from there. So it's the same but different. Do you have another one?
There's a lot of robots being used, but because of the thefts of certain equipment, we're finding out we have to put people back standing there.
Yeah, especially in South Florida. Yeah, it's terrible.
To protect the robot.
Protect the robot. Yeah.
Now, if we can have a robot protecting the robot.
Good. All right. Anything else? All right.
Thank you, Brian. Our next presentation is from Dr. Juhas, who is a UF geomatics professor. Do you have your
I have it online.
online? Okay, let me drop them like this. Browser is here.
Thank you very much. So my name is Levente US, and I'm an assistant professor of geospatial analytics at UF. I actually started this January, so very, very early. For my presentation, I was going to talk about discrete global grid systems as the foundation of, yes, like discrete global grid systems for the foundation of planetary scale GeoAI. That's something that I'm very, very interested in. So I'm running the benchmark study to quantify different geometric properties and computational. But then I was thinking that everyone is interested in AI. So I did a different experiment, and that's what I'm going to actually show today. So this presentation, what you are going to see here, is built with an agentic AI system. I was thinking that, creating a good presentation that's actually accurate and it looks good, it takes a lot of time. And I just wanted to see how it is when I use a very big help. So the contents of this is mine. So I ran the experiment, I designed the experiment, I created the software again with an AI. So that was not created by an unchecked system, but still the final presentation is a result of an AI. So I'm just going to kind of juggle between global grid systems and the process of making this presentation with an AI. So basically the basic idea behind this research is that for when we are using planetary scale GeoAI, they are still tied back to 2D representations of the Earth, as in flat maps, whether they're paper or computer, is the same. But you have a question?
No.
Okay. But when we are talking about global analysis, that introduces a lot of distortions. And I'm saying that we are using flat maps out of convenience, technical legacy. So I'm advocating for changing that. Basically, this is the underlying idea. So even the most advanced state-of-the-art models like AlphaEarth, developed by Google, it's a foundational model for the entire Earth. They use UTM at a 10 meter by 10 meter resolution. So that gets rid of a lot of the distortions, locally. But if we scale up, then there's a lot of problems. UTM is a mix of 60 different zones. So they need to implement wraparound logic and so on and so forth. So it's just not the correct way of doing it at a planetary scale. Also, if we are thinking about, let's say, carbon estimation on a global scale, even within one UTM zone, there's a 0.33% area discrepancy. When we scale up to 100-meter cells, that's actually the size of a garden shed. across 2,300 square meter, like across a square kilometer, that's over 2,000 square meters of error that we might be propagating global models. So that's basically the idea behind using DGKs. So what I did is create a software system, basically to be able to benchmark them. Show the anyway, so I was working with an agent. I introduced it a computational theory of how we work with spherical data. I introduced it to software engineering best practices. So it was a comprehensive system. It took like a while to get this right. The good thing for me is that I have a new lab. I'm hiring my first students in the fall semester. I could use a research engineer, but I just don't have resources to do that. So I have a resource constrained team. But by creating an agent that acts as a research engineer for me and writes software and checks it, that it just greatly simplifies my job. For the presentation, the good thing was that I just gave it access to all the experimental results, summary tables, figures, everything that I run, and then it put this presentation up for me. And I also told it to create like illustrations. For example, on this slide, I just prompted the agent to create a visualization for a space filling curve that I can use in the presentation. And I also told it to not just show the line, but kind of like make sure that it's visible that that line is basically a one-dimensional index. So that's the whole idea behind this space filling curve. I didn't have to code this animation. I didn't have to do anything with it. The agent, once knowing the background of the index and so on and so forth, was able to do this for me. So that was pretty cool. What else? So again, going back to the basic idea of using discrete global grid systems, basically just a tessellation of the Earth, as in the spherical surface. It uses some base solids like an icosahedron, a cube, or like a hybrid way to do that. Basically, it just distributes the distortions that are mathematically there in the process along the whole Earth. So on a global scale, they provide seamless surface with less distortions, basically. I argue that this should be the foundation for global scale GeoAI, as in square pixels, because it's just more accurate. But again, it's an idea at this point that I need to prove. So I wrote this software with my agents to actually be able to do that. And I was running benchmark experiments in the first session. I designed a way to be able to sample the Earth uniformly, as opposed to just generate like 2D points that tend to cluster around the poles. So I wrote an algorithm that basically puts these uniformly distributed sample points on Earth, showing 2,000 points on this figure. In the benchmark experiment, I was using 1 to 10 million. Again, computationally, that's feasible. If we have a software engineer who writes the software, right? And for the benchmarking experiment, I was measuring these are the grids that I tested. Some of them are hexagonal, some of them are rectangular. There's also triangles. There's like a lot of variables. But the idea here is to be able to measure and quantify certain geometric and computational properties. So on the first picture, what you see here, that's the geometric distortion of these underlying grids. And once you visualize them like this, you kind of like trace it back to the underlying 3D solid, whether it's a cube in this case, or icosahedron. This again, like the distortions of this. This is the aerial distortion, so you can visually check, how different grid implementations perform. Another experiment, I was just modifying the computational throughput, because if we have global GeoAI move to this system, then we need to be able to process data fast. So again, I designed an experiment pushing tens and tens of millions of points through this software implementation, measuring the speed, a lot of insights that I'm not going to go in right now. But certain systems can be blazing fast, actually. The idea here is to basically convert everything before spatial analysis into these DGGS index, as opposed to working with vector geometries, and then they can realize a lot of savings. Another experiment, I just checked the accuracy, and what I'm seeing that as I increase the resolution on this axis, then actually the precision approaches 100%, which is what we want to see for global analysis. Okay, next. One of the final results that I will be showing, well, maybe I didn't include that. So I also compared it to regular vector operation. So basically I had 10 million points. I had like large countries with complex shorelines, France, Brazil, and so on and so forth. And I just introduced a regular vector point in polygon counts. Every GIS software does that. I measured the time. Let's say I got 14 seconds, which like, you know, that scale is pretty good on a consumer workstation. I did the same experiment with these global grid systems, and the results that I'm seeing is like 0.2 seconds. So basically, we are seeing like the 20 to 100 times of magnitudes of like faster execution times once the data is processed. Again, in the benchmark, I'm going to be quantifying it. So I'm just going to quickly close it right now here. And the last thing that I want to highlight is again, the creation of this presentation. There was a combination of my research engineer agent and an agent that's designed to take care of my lab's website. And they were actually talking to each other. Like once the presentation was kind of like finalized in structure, the research engineer actually got back to me like, hey, I see on your computer you also have an agent that's taking care of a website. Do you want me to work with it so that we can publish the presentation there? Or do you want a Google Doc or a PDF? And it was, if you want a Google Doc, I can't do that because I don't have access to your Google, but I'm happy to work with the website agent to do that. And they did it. Of course, I was there along the way, so I was double checking what was happening. If it was a presentation for the final benchmark, then I would double check everything, make sure that it's correct. But I thought it was pretty cool to be able to like connect like a computational experiment with like a website design, have them work together and publish this live on a website. And as you see, it's working. I would use different colors, like, you know, bright background and so on and so forth. I can fine tune it, but the technology today is at a level that's helping me save a lot of time and effort, both in the experimental design, conducting the experiment, and then presenting the results. And for a new lab, to be honest, this is invaluable, like being able to save this and perform at this level. So I'm just super excited about agentic technologies and AI in general. The software will be also released as open source, and that was my presentation for today. I'm very excited to hang out around here and have these conversations with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Two questions.
Yes.
What was the platform for your agent?
So this one specifically is running in Google Anti-Gravity, and the background is Claude and Gemini interchangeably, just because I'm running out of codes. Now the next step of this implementation is going to use UF's hypergator infrastructure. So we have models running there locally. So I will be able to use that for even sensitive data because it's controlled by UF. So
Yeah. The second question is, you know, your look at the Earth as a sphere, was that a perfect sphere or because the Earth is kind of a squished sphere?
Yeah.
So how did you approach that?
Those are different implementations of DGGS. It's also standardized. So the OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium, has an approved standard for them that, you know, controls the design principles. As for the different implementations, let me go back. So, for example, this one is called H3 that was designed by Uber, like the ride-sharing company. So their design principles was to make this blazing fast. So they use a spherical approximation for Earth, but it's super fast. Other grids here, this one and this one, those are scientific grids, so they are specifically designed to be equal area across the globe. They are using the WGS 84 ellipsoid. So it depends on the design choice. You know the math. We have the means. So yeah, it can be anything at this point. Thank you.
Your theory is assuming the earth is round. I'm just kidding.
Just thinking loud,
Yes.
it's a very interesting idea. So you're kind of, in theory, you're saying we don't need projections anymore?
No. We do, especially for local things. But once you scale up and you are trying to do global migration, then it's a problem that you need to break up your analysis, the UTM zones, because they use different coordinate system. So actually the global GeoAI model based a lot of parameters on learning how to navigate different projections, how to navigate the seam at the date line when the continuous coordinate system breaks. So moving to a platform that seamlessly incorporates the Earth will result in better predictions, just because we don't waste parameters on doing these clever tricks that are needed for flat projections. They have their place and they are amazing, but for global applications, especially if they're in it for accuracy, I'm arguing that we should at least consider moving these these different data structures. At least we should entertain them and evaluate the properties, see if they are actually better. Because really, from a computational perspective, like global analysis using flat grids, it's just out of convenience, because that's how we've been using maps. They were great. That's how our computer memory is structured. It's a flat array. But now we have compute, we have different math, everything. I think we should explore the other data structures. Yeah.
Would you think this would give any benefits other than taking the world as it is, rather than, the reason I'm bringing this up is any of the analysis that you do globally typically do not have any spatial accuracy aspect associated. Mostly we look at thematically, right? That's part of the reason why UTM brings distortion, when you talk about global migration, global temperature, and we plus or minus 20 kilometers doesn't matter, but what the reason I'm asking, so kind of what is the advantage, benefit if you kind of use this over projections for?
I think it matters for accuracy too, because the pixel, even if it just varies slightly, it varies. And one of the main principles in deep learning and AI is called translational equivariance. So you want to make sure that the ground area that you represent in the equator or something else is mathematically the same. If you're using a flat projection, it's not. It varies slightly. So your model is going to need to learn how different that car on the equator versus in Norway, for example.
Projection perfect.
Exactly. But a lot of issues, like all the satellite data, they use flat sensors. So there's going to be need to invent a different data ecosystem and infrastructure as well. And there was a recent study, I think they were looking at flash floods or something like that, comparing models that just use latitude grids, how standard to do on a global scale versus this global system. And they saw 28% of increased accuracy when migrating into this. So I think it matters. And as a scientist, the scientist in me says that if we know that it's not accurate, shouldn't we try to find a way that we know is accurate? So that's the motivation behind it.
Sure, it does make sense. Even if volume change, a mass balance studies, if you say it's 30% based on the projection caused by the distortion, yes. It makes sense.
And right now, I don't know, I showed the discrepancy between Tallahassee and St. Augustine, the size of a garden shed. I think if we scale that up into a global scale and try to determine the global tree coverage or something, that might matter. I think it does, but no one has looked into it and proved it. So that's why it's so exciting to I think there's something there. So let's design experiments, let's see what's in there, and let's just take it, step by step.
Thank you. Let's have a very short break, coffee break, and after the break, next speaker will be Dr.
What time? What time? Give a time.
10:15.
Okay. 6 minutes?
Oh, I think that I thought it was 10 minutes. It's not 10.
And of course.
Very good presentation. I really like the idea.
Yeah, so like in their theory, they actually prove.
They screwed up something.
I'm here on.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. We need to make
What?
Just do it like water polo?
No, that's really quite. Yeah, but I know, my guy has not this.
Please do.
Yeah, that's it was great. What?
That's what you mean? Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Oh, this is coming from them.
It makes it a lot easier. Whatever.
As a change officer.
And you can play more.
and.
Yeah, I think.
Many.
It's not sitting.
Officers.
Yeah, well, I had to let him know.
I was saying like, where did Zach go? I mean, I threw him a bone. It's like, Zach knows all this stuff.
Well, I didn't, so, good to see you. Thank you for yesterday, thank you for those notes on the presentation. I might be back to you for some translation.
You can change those.
As well.
Thank you.
So, yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
All right.
number the fall, we need to stop.
So it will be.
He's the Uber. Zach the Uber. Give him 5 stars and tip him well.
That's so. For Chris.
Ah, there you go. It's in a manhole. Careful which one.
We can have some virtual meeting.
It'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
Logistics isn't,
So before you have.
We have the annual conference going.
Another, study first. Follow up.
If you could be a worker, we'd be a.
Hear about
Did your stick?
Yeah, it's already there. That's fine.
Yeah, your stick? No, it's okay. I was second mind like. Anyway, yeah, I was gonna copy, but that's okay.
But so right now we have these 3 by another one by Google. The second one. We have like we do frameworks to have like the size. Then that's also mistake. We were basically.
Yeah.
What is the meaning?
So I.
For example, like if I'm doing a proposal for the migrant study and then like, let's say like PG and
I can see from.
that's one, and also for like liquid engineering, and ask you guys. So
That's where it comes based on.
And those are, I think it might be hard to accept.
I consider that because it's since.
People put everything into this, and then everything just, feedback between the wheel or like, indices.
Because they want to put
Very simple. Discussion. Yeah. So they have, we have to use every time, but ground, they had that point in color. Acting copy. That's how it's on it. I don't know about me.
55.
He will stay on, right? What's the thing? Every calculation has the idea. So it's every math, yada, yada, yada. It's like, that's the salad you're saying, like, we're going to figure out, like, how this study from 2005, the events, like, in you can just see my fire. That was. But what a conversation. It's somebody's the growth is first. Yeah, I see my using this like last time before some year. Got one. I got cats. Soccer. I heard that thing growing up on TV. Somebody watching too much TV. It's very funny. We've heard that.
Hello, everyone. It's 10:15. Let's move on to the next presentation.
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
I'll use this one. I'm more comfortable.
Okay, right. So next presentation will be from Doug T, who will be talk about the big data and the geospatial analysis issue and new challenges.
Yeah, let's give a few minutes, they're not back yet. No, wait,
Like a minute, there's not five, nobody's still in the bathroom.
They're in the bathroom, they're all outside. Just call it.
Okay.
Schools.
Are there any other questions?
I checked the calendar actually, you're a week behind.
I was gonna ask you the same thing. It's like, really?
So we can move on because we have all other schedules.
Yeah. It's good.
Okay.
But I think you're having this one.
I am.
Okay.
And I'm under these rights here.
Yeah, but that's my question, like, you're okay, like, it's
Everybody? Wait.
I mean, that's your second year.
Hey, we started. It's recording.
So my presentation is on big data. I'm not a surveying person, I'm a civil engineer with a hydrology background. So I use a lot of data for analysis, both spatial and temporal. I do work in this data that is acquired, use ML and AI techniques, and then also, of course, do a lot of studies on climate change and climate variability. So we are in an era where we have a tremendous amount of data that is coming in. And then, of course, we talk about the volume, velocity, that's me. And I'm going to present a little bit about big data and what are the challenges. We know that we are getting more data nowadays. It's messy, of course. It's not coming in the right format, what we want. And at the same time, sometimes we are making decisions based on data and the correlations between the data, whatever inferences we can draw from the data are not exactly useful for our decision making. So again, the whole concept of big data, the definition of big data is already changing. It's not stationary anymore. Today's data can be small tomorrow and so on. If you see the Moore's law that, about the transistors, it doubles every year, so it's not following that. We have data that is triple or quadruple. We see a tremendous amount of data explosion. We see that we have high volume of data coming in, variety, different types of variables, different measurement methodologies, and then of course spatial and temporal scale. The data generation speed is also important, how fast the data is coming. I work in radar data, especially for rainfall and so on. The data comes in every 3 minutes or 7 minutes, so you need to start looking at that data and then process that. Of course, at the end of the whole thing, the quality of the data matters. And then, of course, the value, how much the data can provide to your organization. Now, as I said, we do have data that comes in structured and semi-structured. Nowadays, with all the other types of tools we are getting more unstructured data, and that needs to be processed, and we could use generative AI and machine learning techniques. So again, if we consider the new technologies as disruptive, they are disruptive because they are bringing in new innovative approaches for us to handle data, bring in more data from different types of sources. again, this all leads to what we have the problem of how do we analyze this data and then make sense of it. For example, we're also getting the what we call the crowdsourced data. People are collecting rainfall data, temperature data, and then that is also coming in. These are reliable data sets that need to be going through the process of QA/QC so that we can use this data for our applications. So most of the data we get are both spatial and temporal. They have geographical component to it. And these days we are getting satellite data, which is also sub-daily. And then of course, IoTs, other sensors, social media data, geodata, crowdsourcing, and so on. But if you see the key drivers, you see the velocity, the variety, and the veracity. The veracity basically are looking at the quality of data. So I've worked on a number of projects where we are looking at data and see if there are any outliers or anomalies, and that's some of the projects we have done for different water management agencies. So if you look at the data, I mean, you have so many elements associated with the data. This is coming from World Meteorological Organization, and you can see that every time you are holding some data, you have to worry about all these aspects of the data. And then once you have the data, it has to go through different flows. You have to have the collection, quality, storage, sharing, and usage. And of course, every part has a different series of steps we need to worry about so that we can use the data for whatever purpose we are looking for. Now, as a hydrologist, I look at data from a different perspective because every time a phenomena is happening, I need to look at what scale it is happening spatially and what temporal scale it is happening. So that changes the way I use my data for different analysis. So therefore, again, this whole map of starting from a simple storm to a big tornado or having a large hurricane system moving in that has a different time frame and also spatial allocation. And when I talk about data in my field, you have data coming with heterogeneous type of elements. You have the dynamics of the process that is generating the data is different. It is multi-dimensional, multi-temporal, and of course, spatial exhaustiveness and different protocols and standards. All these things make my data, whatever I get in, is becoming very complicated to handle. However, there are benefits for the data. Previously, we were using a little amount of data to develop theory-based models. Now we have a tremendous amount of data where we can use AI or machine learning methods to get to what we call process-guided data science models. So they are empirical, but we are getting some information about how they can be converted into analytical models given the empirical evidence or the data you have. So again, for any data set, we have what we call disinformation. So every data set, whatever we get, has some kind of disinformation. That's what we call the definition. At least in my field, they say that we have this data, but that might not be really helpful in calibrating our model. We do have data, but that data has some issues. Now, those issues can be related to a number of reasons. It can be the selective bias of your monitoring networks, the sampling efforts, the error-prone measurements, random and systematic errors, missing data mechanisms, or any type of bias adjustments you do to the data. So all this will contribute to disinformation. Now, how that affects our models? Of course, we have a lot of conceptual models, physics-based models, data-driven models. All these things are affected because we are ingesting that data into our models and we are calibrating. So that might lead to different conclusions based on the type of data we have and what type of data. Is it disinformative data or other types? Of course, where do we get the uncertainty? We get the uncertainty from two types: random uncertainty based on our measurements, and sometimes we don't have any knowledge about the whole process. So here's an example of where we have reliable information data. We can take a simulation model, we calibrate, we get confidence, mostly robust confidence or robust design, whatever we can get. Once we start getting into disinformative data, then what we do is we try to eliminate a part of that data and then use calibration. And then if you have a lot of disinformative data, then if you remove the entire data, then we have a problem because we cannot calibrate the model. So these are some of the issues that cause your disinformating data: suspicious, anomalous data, data with gaps, interpolated data, data with bias, homogeneity issues, bias-corrected data, downscale, disaggregated data, and of course, scarce data. And here's a nice picture which shows how we use models in hydrology and the geosciences. We have this model complexity versus data availability. As you go into large complexity, you need more data to have some kind of a robust calibration and validation. But sometimes when you have small complexity, but you use large amount of data, that might lead to what we call the disagreement with your data in that region, and that may create problems for our calibration. So we do use a lot of techniques wherever possible in both modeling as well as prediction. And some of these techniques, which you might have already known from ML, the machine learning techniques, association, classification, clustering, predictive modeling, matching, anomaly detection, and dimensionality reduction, regression, and pattern recognition. Some of them I have used in my research. For example, we are looking into anomaly detection in hydrometeorological data, how we assess a large amount of data to see what are the issues with the data or what are the anomalies or outliers in the data. Now, we also have this kind of problem where we have the number of input variables exceeds the number of sample data. You have hundreds of input variables, but then you have very little sample data. Or the other way around is you have sample data greater, but input data is small. Sometimes we need to do what we call spatial and temporal partitioning so that we can improve our model prediction, especially for classification and so on. We do have a lot of areas where we get big data, starting from environmental monitoring systems, weather monitoring, air pollution, forest fire. Everywhere we have a lot of sensors, this data comes in, and then we all use the typical process of trying to push it through the processing. Then we do feature engineering that indicates what type of data variables are important for us, or at least ML algorithms can do the feature engineering. Then we go through the labeling process, training, validation, and then finally get to the point of inference. Of course, we started with statistics, then we came to statistical computing. Now we have statistical learning, which basically transformed into machine learning. That's what we have now. So previously it was called statistical learning. Now we call it as machine learning. And we have a lot of applications because machine learning can do both prediction and identify patterns in our rich unstructured data. So how do we go through the process? We have a lot of steps. We get the data, then we do the data preparation. Of course, some of them are very useful when we are trying to identify outliers and anomalies. Then we go to the data analysis and models of analytics. And then finally, we get to the part where we do both dynamic or static or interactive visualization. Some of this data set, some of these processes will go in real time or in short time so that we can see how this data progresses. There are a number of techniques we can use within ML. We have used several of these techniques for our problems using basically ANN, US Neighbor, Random Forest, SVM, and deep learning, as well as other models to identify problems with our hydrometeorological data. And of course, each of them are connected with four obvious steps: descriptive analysis, diagnostic analysis, predictive analysis, and prescriptive analysis. So at different points in different parts of the projects, we do both prescriptive and predictive analysis. Of course, these are the types of techniques we could use for that analytics. And of course, homogenization. This is again a huge problem in hydrology and also probably other fields where you have data collected at one point. The instrument sighting changes or other factors affect how we collect the data. So you need to change the data or make it homogenized. And that requires the process for us to understand historical data and then change it. USGS, for example, collects a tremendous amount of data. Now they are moving towards what we call data science, where they can generate knowledge out of that data they are collecting. They are collecting more than 1.5 million sites across 50 states. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of data that they can use for employing what we call the whole idea of knowledge generation. Missing data is a huge problem. I work a lot in this one, especially missing stream flow data, rainfall data, and so on. That's very important for us because we have a lot of gaps. And based on the missing data, we have these kind of problems which we have. For example, we have known knowns, we have known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. The third one is most difficult because we don't know the process and how the missing data is generated. The second one, we already know that we have unknowns, that is missing data, so we have to start estimating them. We also have some problems with the networks. How we optimize the networks, how to get to the point of evaluating outliers and anomalies. That is a very important task when you are collecting a tremendous amount of data, both in geoscience as well as water science fields. And that needs to be evaluated. We need to do the curation. We need to do the quality control before the data can get to be used for modeling purposes. So here's an example of the types of anomalies we dealt with. For example, there's a peak type anomaly, the constant offset, linear offset, flat line, zero value. And then, of course, we have other anomalies which we have to deal with when we are getting real life data. So one of the experiments we have done is what we call the autoencoder. This is one of the ML techniques. So what we do is we exactly use the same data for training. So we ingest a tremendous amount of data to see that the machine learning approach, in this case, the autoencoders will learn what is going on in that system. And next time you present the data set, it'll try to produce the similar kind of output, but then you see a large variation on that side, indicating that this is a outlier. So we have used these techniques, and right now they are being used at the water management district for them to identify outliers. Again, when we are looking at the data, how we are collecting, three things are important: the point data and the gridded data. We work with gridded data as well as point data. So every time we are looking at any data measurement, we have to look at three different aspects. One is the spacing, the extent, the support, the size of the measurement itself. So we do have problems when we are doing upscaling and downscaling. This is a common process where we do either for climate change models or any hydrologic models, we have to do upscaling and downscaling. That introduces problems for spacing and extent. So we do have a tremendous amount of data, and these days in real time, we are getting data at every 3 minutes or 5 minutes. For example, if you take radar data for precipitation, we do get it at 3 or 7 minutes, and then we need to process it quickly and then ingest that data into a database so that they can use for making real-time decisions. For example, every 15 minutes, they need to make a decision in terms of canal operations and so on. Again, this is the same issue with different types of applications. We have big data issues in both hydrological data and meteorological data. And some of the tools we have used is the functional approximation tools, for example, the feed-forward networks, convolution neural networks, deep learning TFTs, and all these things are really helpful for us to either impute the data. For example, if you're trying to estimate missing values at a location, or if you're trying to improve the already interpolated values using neural networks or other types of tools. We also want to do temporal disaggregation. If the data is available at a larger temporal scale, we want to get it to a finer temporal scale. We have used that. And then, of course, we are interested in making some predictions into the future. What might be the data for us? We combine some of the geostatistical methods with the artificial neural networks and so on, understand patterns using machine learning, and then use those patterns to train our models so that we can do good predictions for future values. This is one of the classified developed networks we have developed so that we can see that how we can use patterns to train the networks and we can do the predictions. We also use this data sets efficiently and techniques for do bias corrections because I deal with the precipitation data or the gridded data sets. So we need to do a bias corrections based on the ground truth. Those black dots are ground truth. So we do the error corrections, we do the bias corrections. This needs to be done on the fly, probably in 2-3 minutes and thousands of pixels. So that's where big data problems come in. We also do corrections based on available data in the nearest neighbors, either hidden data or point data. We do that. That's again the same issue with our big data applications. So looking ahead, what are the observations and directions? Of course, we have explosion of data. I can't present all the projects I have done, but again, I see that we do have the tremendous data that is coming in, and then we need to, first of all, curate the data, make sure that the data is valid. And we also have problems with the sensors where we get a lot of data that needs to be evaluated. If you're doing either climate change or variability or any type of hydrologic modeling studies, we need to have that data to be more reliable so that disinformative data doesn't come into your modeling problems. The statistical computing, when we are using statistics, we were using on a manageable data sets. Now the data sets are huge. Again, we need a lot of resources to do statistical computing. And then finally, data analytics, soft computing, as well as the AI methods will really help. And we are getting to that convergence where we have the big data infrastructure, AI, geoscience, and then spatial analysis. I do work in spatial analysis. And we can see that how the big data in geospatial area is increasing. That's where you are getting all kinds of data from different sources. The data is abundant. We do have a lot of data. Now we have improved from manual digitization to now automatic extraction. We have applications in every domain. We have foundation models. That's what I was talking about, where we need to start training on our data sets rather than using the generic foundation models. And of course, the challenges still remain. We have data privacy issues, we have bias issues, we have the ground truth issues, and so on. And responsible deployment is, of course, very critical. I also work in an area called hydroanalytics, where I'm using all the machine learning techniques in processing the hydrological data so that I can develop techniques for understanding the hydrological data for especially anomalies and outliers. So, of course, ML-based methods are sometimes black box. They make minimal assumptions about the data, and they can be complicated in terms of not able to explain the black boxes in them, the type of functional relationships they are building. That's, again, a difficult process. But then now we have what we call the explainable ML or explainable AI coming up. So that will be very useful. So in the past, we were doing a lot of everything manually. We were doing rule-based or static analysis and so on. Now we are moving towards more AI-based or ML-based assessment of available data. Of course, we have a lot of resources that are available. Now we can train foundation models for specific geospatial tasks. And then, of course, there are always limitations. If you see at the bottom, these are some limitations. The model needs to be trained on a specific data set rather than using universal training process. There might be some shift in temporal data. There can be spatial correlation issues if you are doing geospatial data for your analysis. Class imbalance, when you're training these data sets, maybe one class dominates the other. So then you have a problem because it only learns from that data. And then, of course, explainability is a huge problem. We are dealing with that anyway. So in future, probably we'll have more techniques that can explain the whole thought process of the model development. These are some of my books, and the most recent one is the imputation methods, where I discuss about the AI ML methods for estimation of missing data, and then also other, for example, the virtual reality and simulation. That's where a lot of data is required for us to map flooding and so on. So some material is taken from these books. And finally, thank you, I guess. Yes, I try to rush through, but sometimes you have this problem of trying to present everything in one way. Once you from the audience. Yes. Yes.
So a lot of your big data you're ingesting. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the ability or our current inability to move big data. You know, we're collecting now terabytes, soon we'll be collecting petabytes and exabytes. And our struggle today in our world, in the geomatics world, is moving that data from point A to point B. So I'd like to hear if you had any thoughts.
Physical storage or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
This is again a huge problem in water management agencies also. They have tremendous amount of data coming in. And then their idea is to, instead of taking the entire data available for decision making, they take the snapshots of the data. That is very useful. And or we could use, for example, generative AI or ML tools to already train based on that data available so that every time you don't have to look at the data. That is one of the processes we are in.
So it's parsing the data.
Got it.
And then the second one is probably, even though we call it parallel, but we are still doing a serial processing of the data. So that is another thing. But storage, definitely we have improved on that. We have cloud storage, we have data, but the main problem is, there are two problems. The problem is the processing of data in real time. Decisions need to be given in 5 minutes for flooding purposes. So if somebody realizes a rainfall event, a convective rainfall event in one part of Florida, the operators have to make a decision in 5 minutes whether to raise the gates or not, so that there's no localized flooding. So that means we have to evaluate 12,000 pixels at 3 minutes level, process the data, ground truth it, make sure that it is bias corrected, then give it to the decision maker, run it through the model, check the flooding levels, then all this thing needs to be done in 5 minutes. So that's the main issue, that's the main goal for that is approach. Yes.
So going back to that question, I think a potential solution was on your slides. You didn't talk about cloud native technologies, but those are very, very relevant for these products. Basically, it's a paradigm shift. So like, it's not like you download the data and do your analysis. You do the analysis where the data lives, because these technologies are able to just get the subset that you need. So it gives you not just like an incremental update in speed, but like a complete paradigm shift to be able to do exactly just that.
Yeah, we still gotta upload that data, which is still a heavy.
Some of it is done on real time, the uploading, so it's not, there is a bottleneck, I understand, but I think the organizations are getting prepared for that type of data that is coming in now.
So going on along both yours, what I see from a vendor standpoint, if you look at Esri, Navis, the idea of the cloud base has a real issue with security. So a lot of municipalities, government agencies, they won't even let you discuss that because of security.
They want to
And then
maintain
I
their
think-
own servers. They
And
want to maintain.
honestly, yeah, I think that's a bigger issue we're gonna face from a surveying engineering perspective in the next 5 years, is you're gonna get hijacked. And so you have a project with a deadline and you're trying to do it, all of a sudden somebody's gonna go, hey, by the way, that's mine now, you owe me $20,000, but you don't get it. And I see that as a potentially devastating effect on a firm or a project. And I think that's something we, all need to start figuring out, because it's real easy to say, like Esri has the map sharing and stuff. You won't find municipalities using that because they're like, hey, somebody could steal our whole, platform base, and now what? So just my 2 cents from a vendor side.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, most of these water management agencies, they want to maintain their own servers. And that creates a problem bottleneck every time access of the data.
Correct. So like if his company did a project for municipality and he says, oh yeah, we're throwing it on the cloud, chances are he's not gonna have that contract.
That is problem. That's it. I think that mindset has to change, that when we are getting this much amount of big data, we need to store it in a place which can be easily accessed for processing.
And also very secure. And that is above my pay grade, but it is an issue that definitely you're seeing more concern.
So we have to move on to the next presentation, segment of T. Thank you. Nagarajan will be talking about the impact of AI on
I don't know what I
application.
should be talking about. Okay.
All right. Right on time, so it's my PhD student, so. All right, so. This is kind of more of a discussion or me thinking aloud about this technology with you all, rather than like, a topic, a research topic, or like another work that I've been doing. Just wanted to kind of think loud with you guys, as I always bounce off ideas with my buddies, which is what I'm doing right now. First, I'm pretty sure all of you say that. How many of you use any of the AI tools for day-to-day basis? Almost all of us, right? I mean, today I'm not going to be talking about whether what is the AI and all that. To some extent, yes, because I want to make a clear distinction of within AI. We all talked about it, right? There's different avenues. It's often confused. So that's kind of I'm gonna touch on as well. So kind of more of what we should be doing AI from educator point of view, and what we should be using more cautiously, right? Again, this is something we have been talking about all along since morning as well. The idea this seems to be embraced. I do have a quote, Ramesh. You probably had, I don't know, 30 quotes. I just have one. I love putting. So nothing in life is to be feared, it's only to be understood, right? So it was credited to Marie Curie. I guess it applies to a lot of things. Within your family, to your own life as well, to be understood, not really feared. With AI, it applies more so because, and there are, again, I'm bringing back what Ramesh brought in his slide. There are a lot of unknown unknowns with the AI. AI doesn't even itself know what it knows, what it doesn't know. It's all, as we all know, the training, the more of the data that has been fed into it. Again, as educators, we need to understand, what it provides. That way, students will make use of it in a way that benefits everybody. Again, there's another point I want to bring back from our discussion this morning. There are going to be multiple, as we move on in our life, this technological advancement, there are going to be multiple black boxes within our workflow. I have been a person who used to be against that. Sometimes some of my students presenting talk about deep learning and all that. I kind of, what do you know about deep learning? Going into the basic, you keep saying the model. What does the model do? But whether we like it or not, there are going to be such solutions. As educators, we should pound on the concept that's important for us. How we more about the destination, not necessarily at every single step of the way. So that's kind of where I come from. So when we use AI, by making that distinction is not easy, right? How far you need to know the technology. That's where it kind of I want to think loud with you all. That's kind of what I have put in here. With again, AI, what I noticed is more you tell AI, less assumption it's going to make, right? So which is always should be the case. We have to be extremely, cautious with that, especially when you ask help to kind of organize some data, right? Even consolidating your literature review. You should be the one writing every single word of it, not really asking AI to write that, right? You write everything, but grouping them, organizing them, which is okay, but still you need to read every word of it. It's still the tone, but what you initially intended is there. And AA, which is something I'm not completely okay with it, the way we now use this terminology, AI. The way I see it is like the LLM, agentic AI, and then the sensor processing. They're all put into one word AI, but they're not all. They're all not the same. I don't have absolutely any problem with using any of the technology. We talked about vision, right? Using autonomous vehicle, talking about the building extraction. It's kind of part of what we, geomatics engineers do. And that often people confuse that with sometimes LLM as well. So I think there should be some distinction. When we talk about AI, it's just not one thing. Again, personally, I believe that only in LLM and agentic AI has advanced drastically in the last 4 or 5 years, but not other areas have been growing, but not as much. It's not a sudden breakthrough. Yes, we have better tools to understand the data, partly, more data, for example, level 4 autonomous vehicles, way more, which wasn't there a few years ago. Now we even have it in Miami that we can use. That's part of, some of the AI techniques we did not have earlier. Again, LLM is ChatGPT, drafting an essay, summarizing a research paper, summarizing, right? It's not, you have a page of 15 pages, you take some notes, right? You read the paper and then extract, organize your thoughts. Even sometimes I do that, right? I just scribbling for 3 pages and then kind of like organizing it. Just saves so much time, which is completely okay in my point of view. We all use AI, right? For example, educators, that's what I was saying, like brainstorming, outlines, slide drafts. Put together, I use Copilot a lot. I type in everything in the slide, and then Copilot gives the design suggestions. It's good. It saves a lot of time for me. There's nothing wrong in that, personally. But you cannot ask AI to create slides for you. Organizing the data, which is completely okay. Summarizing the literature, again, not asking you to write the literature. Sometimes even the structure, right? You want to, what would be the typical items we should have in a certain type of report, right? So again, you still need to be the driver, not really the opposite. Ask AI to do everything and then you check and submit it, or sometimes a lot of them. I have some examples of people who have not even checked the work before even submitting some of the assignments. So where are the gray areas in it, right? For example, as I mentioned earlier, the less controversial part are like sensing, using AI for detection, extracting roadways, extracting the different road signs, for example, extracting 3D buildings. I don't see anything wrong with using AI. Why? Because most of the time I do understand what type of algorithm was used, and then you know the source, then you credit it. But how about asking AI to write a lab report? No problem, right?
Students may be doing already.
Yes, that's what I said. I have some examples. Which is, yeah.
You gotta show them that one.
Yeah, it's coming. But there are issues with that. Also, there's no way to flag if the report is AI generated or not. Who is going to police all that? I know how student writes in the exams and emails, and the report doesn't look like, if it's not even relevant. For example, when they ask topographic surveying using RTK positioning technique, they talk about GNSS is the best invention that mankind has ever seen. What that has anything to do with the lab exercise? Obviously, they ask AI to write those things. Or there are some gray areas. Is it okay to use Grammarly style grammar fixing? Is it okay to use it?
Sure.
Yes, right? There are some discussion some universities are even restricting the usage.
Right now, the research journals, if you want to publish a paper, they are not allowing you to use AI.
Yes.
Including for the reviewing process also, they are not allowing you to use AI, but they cannot monitor who is using it, who is not using. That's the first thing.
Exactly. So that's kind of why I'm coming in as well. Before we get to that, that's kind of the challenge that we have with the AI. There's no clear-cut answer. There is no guidance has been set. Just as we were also talking since morning, like for example, licensing course. Even as educators, the classroom, what is allowed, what is not allowed. And there is no tool to check and prove like 100% this is not yours. Of course, they can use some techniques, as I said. Look at your writing sample, specimen one from an exam, your your email. But I had more time, so I could write better. I cannot prove that. So in most cases, when originality or creativity is claimed, AI shouldn't be the object. AI should not ask AI, such as lab report, right? You're going to be evaluated how you have written the report. I don't think you should be using AI. So does that mean you can use it to help drafting an email? Is okay?
Oh, sure. Email. You're not claiming creativity on email.
Yes, that's right. So again, you have to be careful. Again, you read the email, maybe ask AI to fix it, right? Not really asking, hey, I want to contact my professor. So the human judgment is wherever it's required, AI can assist, but it shouldn't be the one making the decision, right? For example, AI brainstorming, outlining, grammar checks are allowed, like, going forward. As of now, FAU has a guideline, like, for syllabus, we need to make this AI prohibited or AI allowed. My memory is right, there's only two categories. You can allow or not, do not allow at all. But it's not that easy, So, but we cannot spell out all the tasks as well, what is allowed, right? So for example, here, must disclose any AI-assisted drafting, a substantial editing must be acknowledged. But again, the substantial, what is substantial? Who is going to define that? Again, submitting reports, never allowed, right? This is what we are talking about here. Flagged as AI generated is not a proof. I have a couple of examples, which is kind of sounds so stupid. Like how this, AI marked this as like AI generated. As a matter of fact, my son was showing some report, like they have to say that this report was not generated by AI. Then they have to run it through Eternity and submit that report. Then he showed me, hey, mark that sentence as AI generated. Then he had to write in such a way that AI was not utilized in Turnitin doesn't detect, right? Another important thing people have to be extremely cautious is AI can sound certain and confident. It can still be 100% wrong. Because of in the DAC meeting, I gave an example. It's not a very complex math problem, but it's more like a counting number. There was a question from my kids, the math competition, like how many in a 5-digit number which is divisible by 11. There are how many numbers which all the digits add up to 35 or something, right? If you're quick, then you can count, and there are formulas you can do, solve, and all that. That's how the kids do it. And my kid got that wrong, so he asked AI, I want to know the solution. Then it gave a 64 as answer. Very nice explanation. It almost made sense. And then my kid said, no, the actual answer was 30. And then, hey, oh, I'm glad you caught that. And then completely different, very strong explanation that why the answer is 30. It's not even a complex math problem. It's more like, counting and how quickly you can do simple algebraic problem. So people have to be extremely cautious. Again, all this I'm talking about that's LLM based and the agent AI. But another area I was talking about processing imaging data, laser scanning data, I don't see big issues with it. Right? So these are some of the examples I was talking about. So the left one is not mine. I kind of found it online or somewhere in LinkedIn. Is this mushroom edible? Yes. Right? The right ones are mine. So you can look. So this is from one student's lab report. Some of us know who that could be. Yes, I was immensely enchanted and satisfied seeing each member providing their own opinion regarding how to get the outstanding lab outcomes. I was like, what on earth? It's, I can say that from my survey that this is not the student's writing. But can it go after the student that this is AI generated? No, why not? Look at the other example. This is something my own. I wrote in Grammarly. I usually check for grammar. I was just curious. This is for some kind of like a bio that I wrote. Check for AI and plagiarism. In MARC, National Aeronautic and Space Administration, National Science Foundation, and whatever, as AI generated or plagiarism, it's referred to some article published in 1988. I just listed two funding agencies next to each other. That's plagiarized. Makes no sense. Again, I hope students are not listening. Even somebody says that, like, hey, this looks like AI generated, they can bring some examples like that. You cannot prove what is AI generated. That's where we are right now, unfortunately. Second.
These AI detectors are notoriously bad. I just saw an example of someone uploading their own paper from, I think it was 2012. So 5 years predating the transformer architecture by Google was 2017. And the article came back as likely AI generated. So that, we should not trust these AI detectors, even when our institutions subscribe and then they give us the tools. I'm with you. So you should be evaluating it against your own judgment.
Yeah, I think, I have a general question for industry also. When you generate the reports, let's say if you're using AI or one of those tools, of course, you stand by that report, right? When you submit to government agencies and so on. So are there any restrictions that the government agencies put that you cannot use AI or, right? There's no restriction right now, at least. Yeah. So in future, probably they will, or they might say, well, you can deliver the product, you stand by it, right? That's it. Right.
Yeah, so you're signing it.
Yeah, as a PE, you are signing, yeah, of course.
Glad you brought this up, we were in the ABET symposium. There's somebody talking about self-study report, which is critical.
Generated by AI.
Major portion of that was generated by AI.
The question I have is that since AI is here, we know students will use it in one form or the other. We cannot prove that they are using it. So it's better to allow them to use it, but at the same time, they have to stand by. They are ready to explain what they have written. All right.
That's a very good point. I did have it in the slide. I didn't go over it. I got lost with other things So that's where, as educators, we cannot say that no AI. Students will anyway. We have to use them how effectively and how kind of ethically use them.
Yeah.
That brings up to next guy, ethics guys.
Good. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Speaker will be Mr.
Oh, next is Greek. Okay, that's great. Sorry.
I'm happy to load the PowerPoint.
Rick, we only got 2 minutes.
I can do it. I bust the first slide up. I'll be enchanted. immensely enchanted with this conversation.
You ever use
I'm not used for email.
It's funny. My word. It's surveying. Those terms. Like, so.
No,
Like
it's not going into AI. Going into strictly application of a couple of projects I did, showing you how we integrate. Between survey information and GIS.
Right.
Just so you know, I have a background on me, I came up from the ranks. Went through every single thing, from starting with chains and tapes and mechanical instruments and. Basically me, I've been working for 54 years now. These are all the different softwares I've used over the time. Bottom ones are the ones I'm still using. You have any questions on those? Geomatics. I was around when they changed the name from land surveying to geomatics. And Dr. Gibson back then brought that idea down from Canada from a seminar he went to up there, and the reason why he wanted to change the name was because around the world, all these different disciplines are covering, and that's really where surveying and mapping is. In the early days, that's what we had for a survey group. We even had guns, axemen. Then we went from this as experts in measurement. Everything you can see today, all the technology that's out there. A lot of this has happened just over the last 25 years. So we went from that early state with very basic equipment to every technology that you can think of. And it's become a mind-blowing aspect of what we do today. I started using LiDAR back in 2005, found out there was patented in 1969, used by the Department of Defense mainly. And then finally, when it became available to the public, they started using it in their area. And the Florida Department of Emergency Management used it to do the first coastal stormwater models for Florida. As you probably all know, I mean, that basically it's used nowadays almost on everything that we do. So the aspect that has changed over the past, even the past 5 years, in the use of LiDAR and all sorts of both terrestrial, mobile, aerial, has become standard across the United States. The fact that you can get multiple returns from the sensor, the pulses, and the information that you can classify it into up to 225 different categories. A lot of this is done automatically in the software that's out there. It's critical to us. Makes it easy to use, makes it more flexible in what we do every day, especially with topography. One of the main sources that I use of the data is the NOAA website. Of course, NOAA's really interested in the coast. So it's going to cover around all the coastline with really accurate and up-to-date information. The rest of the country is done by USGS through their 3-depth program, but you can access free data that's very well classified, it's very well done, and it's become standard. You can trust the data. I'm just going to take you on an archaeological expedition, a short one. So what we decide we're going to do something similar to what they're doing down the Yucatan Peninsula, looking for ancient civilizations. This is up in Tallahassee. I just boxed in an area of this state park. And the NOAA website gives you a choice of what you can download. You make that choice, gives you the option to put in different projections, get the data. And of course, you know, anybody that's used to working with LiDAR data knows that this is a raw data. It's classified data, but it's raw. Has elevations, all three-dimensional points, billions of points in there. But the fact that you can erase the trees and above ground stuff, see what's underneath is how they use it down there to find these ancient civilizations. But here's happens to be an Indian mound that's in that site. You zoom in closer, you get it into 3 dimensions, contours of it, and look at it from a 3-dimensional standpoint. As a surveyor, this is very critical to us. Look at the trees that are covering. How that density is really amazing that we can get down to the ground level through that. Just by the automation that's built in. You look at the number of points that were a number of returns on the different pulses that come out, classify that, so we can all classify just the ground level extracted. So that's the ground points from that. And those ground points are built into a digital elevation model. And, makes it very useful. The other type of LiDAR that's come out in the last 5 years and being used by NOAA is the topography line. Not many people are aware of this. It's already available along the coast. Topography LiDAR uses a green laser which penetrates the water. They couldn't do. Penetrates up to 30 meters if the water is clear and there's no stuff in the water itself. I used it for work I'm doing with DEP. This is the site of the Keys. Get down to the level, looking at it, I can extract, and now I can see underneath the water the different channels that are built in there, what was dug out. Zoom in, you can see the depth of the canals alongside. You can also use it for information about the sovereign lands. So if you get with DEP, they already know what the mean high water line elevation is. I can put a contour line directly on the mean high water line, tell you what's sovereign and what state of the land. Just by looking at the light, it's free data. So now I've used this, I've demonstrated to DEP and they've accepted this as long as I do my checks on the elevations. They've accepted this as being telling them where the approximate mean high water line is. So they can give a safe upland limit when you're dealing with this type of information. Just because I only have 20 minutes, I'm going to give you an example of integrating survey and GIS work. This is the city of Fort Lauderdale. They have a problem with the water lines. It's been in the papers forever. They got cited by Department of Emergency Environmental Protection. They had to take their existing GIS of their water lines, make it accurate. So they knew where all the valves, all the lines were as accurate as you can get. Yeah, we got the job because of the way we told them we were going to do it. It covers 63 land sections, 760 miles of pipe, they're 4 inches above. That was all the information that we had to locate and accurately measure. I ended up hiring 10 different survey companies to come help me do this. I had to manage all these things. So what we did was we decided that we were going to do LiDAR acquisition across the entire city. We did both mobile. We had 3 companies come in and drive every single one of the streets. We had another company come and fly it. So that in the end, after 8 to 10 weeks of work, we had the whole entire city 3-dimensional above ground.
Rick, did you designate it before you flew it? Or before you did the LiDAR? Did you designate a lot of the water? Did you utilities, QLB?
I didn't do any designations before we did this. I needed to get this done first. I'll go into that. The reason why we were doing the because we were looking for all the above ground features. Okay, so once you get the mobile LiDAR, 2-inch pixel aerials, you can lay on top of each other, you can extract that with the computer on 70% of it with that, and then another 25% for field checks. like crews out in the field. You'd also get other assets, so I showed them right from the start that, yeah, this is a lot of money, there's a lot of data that we're getting, but after we're done, you can still go in there and use that data and collect even more out. We already used. We also wanted what was underneath. We needed to get those lines as accurate as possible. So we had 8 different Sioux companies come out there, and I broke up the city into 8 different places. And we used every aspect of Sioux operations for them to go out there and physically walk the water lines and collect the information as accurate as they could. I had to analyze the existing GIS database, see what they had, see how they handled it, how the information was built inside the database, and things like abandoned valves that were still, they weren't interested in, but it was going to show up. So I needed to know what was there and what wasn't. I looked at things like inside the database in 2001, they had collected GPS on some of the valves. They had coordinates on it. But if you go in there and look at the coordinates, the green areas are the actual coordinates of the valves. The valves were someplace different. Database. So I started investigating. What they did was their final product up until this day was a PDF. What they did was they slid the valve along the line so it would show up in the PDF. They were handing up images. Figure that out. The other thing I wanted was high resolution areas. So here's an example, 6-inch pixel, that's a 3-inch pixel, so that we can actually see the valves, the georeferenced aerials, so I can actually move the valves without field operation. You can move this check valve from where it was in the GIS right to the check valve that was there and it was accurate enough. Within plus or minus a foot is what we were getting for accuracy. High density aerial LiDAR. I've been harping on this for a long time. First time we did the project for them, we did their stormwater. I flew the whole city at 60 points per square meter on the ground back in 2016. It was the highest resolution I could find from any aerial firm. So that was unheard of at the time. The way we did that was we flew the city in 2 cardinal directions, so that we had overlapping LiDAR and then we were able to get the 60 points per meter. This shows you the example of what you can get from USGS right now. For 3 depth, that's a part of the Fort Lauderdale Airport runway. A little later, FDOT came in and got 90 points per square meter. Then for Fort Lauderdale, we had to be flown at 150 to 160. So you can see the level of density and detail that we were able to collect. Because I needed to see not only details of the streets, I needed to see the backyards just in case there was utilities in the backyards. Here's an example of typical fire hydrant. The mobile LiDAR, you see it in that color, but with 150, 160 points per square meter, that's what you get. The idea was I could still find it. I used that quite a bit. There was a lot of water lines that went behind the building. I went into extreme detail planning this whole operation, 2 to 3 months just to come up with the details. I went through iterations on the number of crews I would need, how much time they would seek on each item they were doing, including how much time they were going to take at each asset, the time between the assets, MOT if it was needed or not, rain days. And to figure that into the whole thing, but I had to get this whole thing done in 2 years. I'd come up with some scenarios, so that was longhand, that was how I did it. And I was able to piecemeal how it was going to be done. The aerial tiles across the whole city, I broke it up into 1,000-foot by 1,000-foot tiles. I also had them fly aerial LiDAR, so I had them create the same tile format, so I didn't have to figure out which one was which. They used the same formula. QA/QC on the aerial. It's statistical analysis across. This is a part that AI can help you with. Statistical part. Checking if the aerial LiDAR against the control that we use. And across the entire city, elevation wise, at 99%, we got 1800s elevation wise accuracy across the entire city. In 2016, we got 1500s elevation across the city. Same situation, they flew 2 cardinal right directions in order to get this dense slide. Mobile LiDAR, same thing, I had to cut it up into tiles, 3 different firms, drove 750 miles. Now, this was asset level collect, so they were only using GPS in order to do mobile LiDAR. We did not set control for it, so we were looking for a 1/2 foot horizontal and vertical accuracy, which was fine. We did get the assets in the right place. The only place we had a problem with is downtown Fort Lauderdale. We have the tall buildings, GPS had to be controlled by the trajectories. Mobile LiDAR. We had checked the mobile LiDAR, we've done surveys across the entire city for years. So I took those surveys, overlaid them on the aerial LiDAR to check the accuracy of the collection. On the mobile LiDAR, if you had more than 3 lanes of traffic, I had them drive it 2 different directions. So as you're doing it with GPS, I had to constantly look at this. So you had one path going here, the other direction going here. I had to make sure that difference, because I was looking mainly for horizontal, was making sure that that distance, honoring that vertical was within the 1/2 foot, but the horizontal was as well. I chose to break up of the SUE companies work and the mobile LiDAR. They're different areas that they dealt with. We also had water meters, 60,000 water meters. Now, the water meter people only had addresses. They didn't know what their water meters were. So they gave me the addresses, I georeferenced or geotagged the addresses to the parcels. So now I have a point in the center of each lot. They don't know where that water meter is. So the survey crews had to go out there and physically walk every single roadway. I don't know if you can get AI to do that. Anyways, it was very experience. They did have a little map that the water meter guys used, a lot, a typical lot. They had broken out into squares around the lot, and they would tell you, okay, it's at position 1 on that lot. That was the only thing we really had. The SUE company, I took the existing GIS data, put it into CAD for them because most of the companies didn't use GIS. And I set it up so that you click on any one of the lines, you got the data from the line as to what type of lines. Because I didn't want them locating 2-inch lines or 3-inch lines, they had 4 inches and above. I had to specifically tell them approximately where in the GIS where those lines were. Because first time I asked them for a price, they gave me a price on a typical SUE job, which means they're collecting all utilities. I had to remind them that they're going down the road and only collecting water. Not interested in the other. In the AutoCAD, I set up line types, specific line types in CAD, so that when they give me back the CAD file, I can take this and I've got a algorithm set up so that I can bring this right back into GIS. And I already have the information about the pipe on. I also gave them the data in Google Earth so that their managers could follow along with how they were doing their work. And that Google Earth file had the data as well inside. I had to deal with the GIS people there, coming up with the problem areas, how we were gonna handle it. All the 24-inch water mains had butterfly valves. So the valve itself in the field was gonna be offset, our pipe itself. So I had to come up with a way to do that. So we had floating valves in the GIS, which they had never had before. And we had to set the fitting opposite the valve, so they had some idea, so we could, when GIS did the analysis on the fittings to know where that valve was associated with that pipe. Same situation with the fire hydrant assemblies. We weren't interested in the lines here because it wasn't part of the modeling process. They still needed the valve and the fire hydrant. And they all had fittings in there, but the fittings were all over the place. We had to move the fitting opposite the valve. Correct that in the GIS. In this case, we had situations where in the GIS, they showed breaks in the line, bends in the line. Sioux company comes back and tells there's no break in the line, but it's a straight line. What we figured out was in the as-built after analysis, these bends were actually vertical bends, not horizontal. They just did that for their own, so we had to correct that. Same situation on the other, we would go out there, they said there's a straight line, Sioux company finds a bend, so we had to add the bends, break the lines, add the bends, the fittings. Lost valves, or the crew comes back and they say, I can't find these valves. So I had my people go into Google Earth, Google Maps, and just do an overlay on the streets that they could see to show them where the valves approximately were. So we were able to do that in that case, helped a lot for them to actually go find the valves. That situation where I had an as-built, I had to put the property lines in from the GIS parcel data from the property appraiser, so I could put the as-built in that's 15 feet off the property line or whatever. Use that in some cases. Another lost valves, crew would come back, one of the subs saying we can't find these. Then I went looking specifically at it and I went to Google Maps as well. And you can go back in time in Google Maps on some of the streets, you have different views of it. So some cases you can go back and there's no car there. So you can see the valves and identify them, then they'll send the crew back out there to collect. So this whole QA/QC process was a constant thing. We looked at over 900 as-builts. Of course, some of the as-built said as-built, but they weren't an as-built, they were a plan, proposed plan. So they had a lot of information like that. So we had to identify not only the lines on the as-built. We had plenty of areas where there were no as-built. We were finding valves and lines. We had to work with the city on that as well. Then in the end, each section down to the range was separated into a utility zone in their own system. So what we did, because they just had the lines in there, what we did was we looked at each as-built and identified the area that the as-built covered. So now they have a visual view of what that as-built is. Covers. And in the end, we ended up delivering AutoCAD Civil 3D, point file of all the features, geodatabase by zone, mobile lidar, aerial lidar, aerial photography, zone maps, reports on how many features, reports on how many miles and where we're located. And this is critical. And you gotta remember this, you have to question everything when you're dealing with this type of stuff. Things aren't always as they appear. Right. That's it.
Great presentation. You said you are using quantum GIS or you are already
Quantum,
QGIS?
I use QGIS now,
Okay.
mainly because I used ArcGIS up until 2024, and I retired. Now I'm my own company, and now I found that open source does pretty much everything I need. And several of the cities I've talked to are kind of looking at open source software. So I know TDP and FDOT are also looking at open source because they're afraid Because they don't want to be stuck in Esri's
Contracts.
contract, right?
So you are okay with the question I wanted to ask is that the outputs generated by QGIS are as robust as the Esri product?
Actually, they're pretty good. And Esri has already stated that they're making allowances for open source. Just in the last year. So I can get pretty much anything that's in Esri.
I use QGIS in my research, but we declare that in our papers, there's no problem, but when you're signing off on important designs or whatever, is
I
that?
haven't signed off on anything. I used all ArcGIS.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I've used ArcGIS since 1990.
I was gonna say, don't age yourself.
1999 was the first.
View 3.1 or?
So after Info 7.1, which was a Unix based,
Correct.
5,000 command line.
Yeah.
That's aging.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody else? Any questions?
One thing, kind of, when you are showing this example of overlaying some of the Google Earth or some maps, something came to my mind. I want to kind of like get your thoughts on it. There's something called like a full spectrum geospatial intelligence, right? Where you have data from different sources. So how they align with each other very well. For example, laser scanner sees them as a point cloud, right? GPS sees them as individual point. And then the same way, Sue, when you do it in terms of from looking at from the AI perspective, so what do you think is lacking right now for kind of extracting complementary information from each other? That way you can go towards like, is the data get everything possible from this, all of this sensor data?
Well, we started doing some investigation with AI back in 2016 when we did the stormwater project. The city of Fort Lauderdale, I worked with Hayes and Sawyer, their firm, and they were just getting.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I started working with them on the stormwater project. They took the aerial photography, because we had 3-inch pixel aerial back then. They took that, and I worked with them to identify manholes in the aerial photography. They were able to identify them, the pixel, the shape, size. They were able to go through and actually pick out about 80% of the manholes automatically from the aerial photography.
Just the photograph.
That's the photogrammetry. Only because it's 3-inch pixel. Wouldn't be able to do that with anything. So every project I've done since 2016 where I used LiDAR, I've consistently gotten denser and denser LiDAR and better aerial. He said all our own control, we check it, like on the that particular new aerial LiDAR, we went through 1,800 cross sections on the roads, checking the aerial cross section with GPS against the aerial LiDAR. And it was stayed within that 1,800 elevation. So that was really interesting to me. So it's gotten better for that. Okay. Yes.
Okay, if you have another question, we can continue the discussion during the lunch break.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Rick.
Cool.
Will be from Dr. Blocher, who is an associate dean and also got a professional engineer license. He will be talking about the AI and the impact of P and
Ongo, you're a half hour behind.
45 seconds like yesterday. 45 minutes or 45 seconds.
Who's this guy talking?
You know.
Right. Oh, cool.
This is enchanting.
Yeah.
It's from a movie.
Get alive. All right. I'm gonna skip some stuff here for time.
Okay.
You know, lots of people want to go set stuff up and somebody probably wants to eat lunch. All right, so I'm not gonna say AI is good or bad. I'm just gonna raise some issues here. All right. but historically, I mean, we're gonna use AI, for a lot of things. We're using it for pattern recognitions, for statistics. It can look at images and process those. Okay, it's kind of the cutting edge. But, so Rick will remember, we had the computers, it was GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. That has not changed. Computers are just very fast morons. Okay, and they only learn based on whatever stupid stuff we put in there.
Those are webcam.
Exactly. Don't get me started on OpenAI. If we find out how that was trained, never use it. Okay. We've been talking about this AI and computer stuff since at least the 50s. So it's not like it's new. We just keep changing the name as computer systems go faster. So we got expert systems, machine learning, and deep learning, and generative AI, and now we're up at agentic AI, right? So, and it's going to continue to grow like that. And the reality is, the world did not end when calculators were created. Okay, it didn't end when computers were created, because we all heard that, and the world did not end in 2000. Okay, that's just what half the people were like, oh no, all the computers will die and they'll never work after that. Okay, yeah, it didn't happen, and so it's a continuum that goes on there. I have a friend of mine, we're talking about this for looking at water utility, so I'll toss that up. It's nicely with Rick's water system, right? We're already using it for operations, treatment plants and stuff like that. There's no membrane system out there that should have any operator touching it. Just let the computer do it, but hope somebody knows how to do that. And you look at the cost of membrane plants and stuff like that today, they've way more than doubled, and the cost for the membrane equipment has not changed in 15 years. So and the building has changed a little bit, but it sounds like all the computer programming. And I remember back, we built the Dania water plant. This is at the time like an $8 million project, right? And there's some dude that comes wandering in, it's like losing out, and who's a little tall. And he tells me, he says, oh, by the way, I have a contract out in Colorado with a company, and we do ski stuff, right? And so they have a snowmaking machine. They pay me $5,000 a day and put me up, pay my flight. So if it breaks, I'm leaving. Like, you know, we're in the middle of my project, because it's $5,000 a day. I'm sure that number has gone up significantly, which tells you that people that know how to use this properly are getting paid for stuff. And it's extending to customer service. Everybody, you know, the reason that Rick has to find those water meters, because the utility really doesn't want to know where they are, because there's a zillion things they can learn, except that none of them know how to actually run the zero read report, okay, which would tell them the people that are stealing water from them. They don't run that, but they want the ability to tell you to flush the toilet. They don't know what to do with the data. And so they're going to incorporate, or ask us to incorporate, AI or somebody to figure out this reams and reams and reams of data is. And then the question is going to be, as we've already talked about, is it useful data, right? We need to identify some sort of framework. Run and verify is a big issue that we need to talk about. And then where's the domain going to lie, are all big questions that are out there. So we keep having certain people that will say that it's going to take all our jobs. I have a friend of mine, and he says, well, he actually uses generative AI to write reports and analyze data that he gives it, right? So he gets the data, he evaluates it, has it go do it because he doesn't like to write. And then he goes ahead, and what he does is he edits what the AI tools write, okay? And that's how he does stuff. But his answer was, the problem that we have right now is that if you don't have some of this, then you're not ever going to get into the job market, because the issue right now is prompting. How do we ask it for the useful data? So I'm going to deviate from the slide. Dean Miroff teaches a class called Mission to Mars. And so to go demonstrate how good AI tools are, because all the students are using them, it doesn't matter whether you prohibit them or not, they're going to be enchanted. Okay. We all know who the student is, it's the inside joke. So they go out there and they say, so what are the most important things that you need in order to live on Mars? That sounds like an obvious answer, right? Yes? Come on, yes? You've been sitting way too long. Okay. Okay. What does ChatGPT says is the number one answer?
Water.
No. No.
Oxygen.
No. No.
Fuel.
No. Radiation shield. Why?
I suppose they have no evidence.
Why does AI say radiation shield?
There's almost,
But it's only based on data in, data out, that's probably,
Search the whole internet.
yeah.
You can't live.
Watch the movie.
It's answering the question from its perspective. It's gonna be sitting on Mars for 30 years, the radiation shield matters. It doesn't need water, it doesn't need food, doesn't need oxygen, it's a computer. It needs to make sure that all those random photons don't destroy it.
Looking out for itself.
It's looking out for itself. Didn't see that one coming, did you? No.
Makes
All right.
perfect sense though.
So let's ask a question. How many people remember the trolley problem from philosophy? Wow, that is so depressing. One. Okay, wow, that's depressing. Okay, so in a philosophy class, this is a problem that comes many years ago. And the question is, there's a trolley. There's a conductor on the trolley, so it must be San Francisco, right? And so the trolley, go ahead, man. And so the trolley's going down a hill and the conductor realizes one of two things is gonna happen. The trolley is gonna crash and kill the conductor, or it's going to kill 5 kids. What's the appropriate answer? Let's talk philosophy. What's the appropriate answer?
Are they?
Really tough, right?
Depending on what is the narrow age.
It's Rick on as the conductor.
I'm the
Going along, and he has to make a decision whether he's gonna, destroy it or he's gonna kill the 5 kids.
Well, how old are these kids? No, good.
They're little kids, once you don't want in your yard.
Well, yeah, the problem is,
I mean, philosophers have been talking about this. The problem is, well, the kids, they should live because they have economic value. They might be next Einstein, but the conductor and the equipment's really valuable. The public owns it. Going on, right? So none of this helps you, right?
No.
What does AI say? Look at the guy.
Save
the equipment. Then the guy and save 5 kids problem.
Yeah.
What did we just learn?
The machines.
Save the product cost 5 kids. So all the computer programmers go, no problem, I'll train it not to kill the 5 kids when they're 6.
Right.
So he says, okay, well, I'll train for that. What if there's a bicycle? What if one of the kids is this tall? By the way, there's a couple of books that are floating around out there where they've actually tried this, and guess what? Can't solve the problem because the machine don't work if it don't protect itself. So it will always kill whatever because it won't kill itself. Interesting problem for the vehicles that are out there because autonomous vehicles don't work if they don't protect themselves. Don't run out in traffic, Luz, now. It's gonna kill you. Okay, so where does all that lead us? It leads us to a scenario that we're in here. So I'm gonna skip through a whole bunch of slides. Okay, let's talk about ethics issues. We all have these, right? And so what we're supposed to do, what we are required to do, not just by ethical codes and creeds and canons and all that stuff, but by law. It's in its Florida statutes. It's in every state statute. Okay? We have to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Here's those 5 kids. Yeah, I got 5 kids in my neighborhood, no problem. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. Okay, so we start with this issue and implying that there's the codes and we come up with these ethical dilemmas that's supposed to help us with him, and the ethical codes do not tell us how to solve the problem with the 5 kids. Okay, we're gonna, this, hey, you know what, we don't wanna kill the guy driving the truck, the trolley either. Okay, so we have all these things where we're developing software that we can design buildings, and we can design airplanes and cars and all this cool stuff. But military applications. Anthropologics, one of their issues is when you want the machine making the decision about launching stuff.
War games.
War games, yeah.
Yeah.
War games, right? We all saw the movie. Okay, you didn't see the movie, you have to look at it. Probably a movie before your time, actually. Yeah, but yeah, that movie, absolutely, exactly the scenario, war games, right? Okay, the answer is make it play tic-tac-toe. All right? So now we start, which we have to answer these questions, right? Okay, and what do the boards of licensing have to say about how we approach this problem? Well, the Florida Board of Professional Engineers says is, obviously, you're responsible for the design. So, which by the way, is why you have to understand what the black box is so that you know if the answer is right. There's a zillion tons of data. There's way more data. Is it competent data? Is the question. So Dan Muroff and I played this game with ChatGPT, and we decided we should go find out something about the Drake equation, which I do happen to know something about. But anyway, and so we started feeding it stuff, and so it's searching the internet for data, and it didn't come back with anything useful except Wikipedia. So we fed it a few other things. I did write a paper about the Drake equation. It was a fun time. So he's like, hey, let's just put my name in there and all that. So according to ChatGPT, you are in the presence of the world's foremost expert on the Drake equation. Thank you very much. And it quoted a paper that does not exist. Because the first thing is you figure out is it can collect this data, but it doesn't know how to deal with it. So most of the references it comes up with aren't real. Problem? So let's look at data. What datum is it going to use? Good question. Might be off a foot because it's using the wrong datum, right? But it's not going to tell you that because it doesn't know to answer the question, right? So the friend of mine that says, yeah, you might have to have a little of this to go make this work, okay? Because, I'm sorry, but I know you're a student. Did you know to ask it to what datum it's using? She's like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. Problem? Which datum is it going to use? Which one do you want it to use? What?
For which vertical?
There you go. Just start answering those questions. You got to tell it. So it's really useful. So we created we hosted the AFC conference, right? And so we created a song that was AI help. But because I played around with some music generation stuff because I'm trying to learn about music, and here's the problem. I can't get away from Nickelback. All the songs sound like Nickelback. And it's like, that's not what I want. They write in there, not Nickelback. Okay, because it's something that's like a poem, right? So, but it has all this access to data. The key is how do we prompt it to get the right information? And when we put the song together for the ASC competition, all right, I created lyrics, okay, I created some stuff, I gave it the style, okay, and then the prompting was like yay long to go ahead and get something that was semi-useful, right? And it was fun, it was ridiculous, but it was fun, okay? So this is the challenge when you have AI in dropping in there, right? So it will help us with repetitive tasks. We've talked about that. It can take these huge data sets, but we have to know that they're useful data sets, right? Because Gigo, it's garbage data. It's got the wrong datum, okay, it's wrong date, doesn't, whatever it is. Students keep telling us, yeah, we imported all the cloud and it's here, but the, you know, the data, the coordinates are here. Yeah, that's a problem. I don't know how to fix that. Well, that's fortunately you can do it wrong here, but you don't want to do it wrong in the real world, right? So we tried to teach them how to go do this stuff. And it creates an interesting question, as Digna and I were kibitzing. How do we make sure you're the only geomatics student here, right? Yeah, I think so. So we'll have to pick on. How do we make sure that she knows how to do this stuff that you want her to do in a classroom? Well, it's more than that, right? Because you're expecting that she knows how to run a total station here. She actually needs to go do it, right? That's the first thing.
I think
And then
students need to learn how to do things without using AI before.
Yeah, so well, hold on, hang on before I get there, right? So we put her in a group, and who does the work in the group? Most experienced, one person. So it wasn't her. So we get, you know, a little long, and then we say, hey, do you know how to use the total station? She's going, oh yeah, I saw that in class. She know how to use it? No, right? This is a problem. So what's happening is we can do a test. And she's gonna go right here and says, oh, they use the total stations, and blah, 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 blah. It's great, right? She got it off AI. ChatGPT was great. Because Dr. Sue didn't stop her from using, he can't stop her from using it. And you don't know when to recognize it. I'm telling you, if the word enchanting is in there, it's start with probably AI generated, right? So how do we do this? It's like, so what you're gonna see, sorry, Dr. Rocky, you're gonna be up longer times, man. The only way we're gonna be able to do this is we need to make you show us.
She's from Missouri now.
Exactly, from Missouri.
Professor Stu made us set up a total station and we had to record it.
He doesn't know that. So it's like what we do with our design classes, right? They do big projects. You guys saw them, right? Big projects, right? Make them do them, okay? And then you have to present it to us orally. So we get to ask questions. And we can figure out what you know, right? By the way, that takes way more time, right, Dr. Rocky? You got how many people in materials? 40, 50? We're gonna have to ask each one a bunch of questions. Dr. Rocky says, it's gonna interrupt my walk. I don't walk with you, buddy. We're gonna walk and talk. Right? This is going to change education. Okay, because it's going to change what you guys do. But we're gonna have to embrace it. Question then is, how do we teach them to prompt it correctly? So that she wants to learn. I can tell you want to learn. Sorry for picking on you. But I can't name them enchanted guy. Don't ever use those words. Okay? Software is going to continue to develop. Here's the problem. I'm going to guess 5 years after you graduate. Sorry, you'll be obsolete. You're going to have to keep up on the software. Do you all agree? I mean, Rick's been around, you know, at least 20 years or so, right? We did that 1990 thing, you know? 20 more? Okay? The reports are gonna be AI generated, but somebody has to look to make sure that they're written right. It's a great way to go do it. You can go ahead and lay out all this fun and exciting stuff, okay, that we have for geomatics for engineering. We're gonna start teaching engineers GIS going forward as a required class. You're gonna have to, right? Okay, but the problem is we still are gonna have to make sure that there's something that data says. So I had somebody ask me outside, say, okay, so I'm gonna go clean the data set. I'm like, great. How much data do you have? Oh, I have 180,000 lines, each of which has like 100 variables. We're not going to clean that data. Because you don't have enough time to go through all those endless, right? Right. Yeah, so we have students like, yeah, there were 10 billion points in our point cloud. And we're going to clean the data. Not in a four-year education. Okay? AI will help us do that, right? We're already using it. A lot of times we don't even call it AI. It's just, oh, our computer program does it. It's been doing this. I tell our students, you've been using AI to write reports since high school. It's called Word. Little squiggly red line, little blue lines. Quick clue, you didn't say it right? It doesn't tell you whether the content and the thought process is right. So I look at my students, it's like, even the design students, but they're all using Grammarly, ChatGPT or whatever. So I'm hoping there's no misspelled words or stupid grammar. I'm hoping, right? But does the task make sense? What's the critical thinking? And the key is going to be, whether it's in the real world using AI or in the classroom, how do we figure out how to use the critical thinking skills? Because that's what professional licensure is going to require us to do, is to be able to demonstrate that we've actually met that goal. All right, any questions? Did I catch up on the time at all? Yeah. Fire away, man. She's really a nice person. She wants to, look at it this way. She's the only geomatic student here.
Right. Sorry.
Right? Yeah. That says something.
Well, the blue chart, will be in the city design.
Okay, she's the one.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. She's the one. I got you. No problem. It'll be fun. All right, questions? Aren't you supposed to be having people set up and talk about more stuff?
Yeah.
All right,
Well, there are
let's do it.
questions.
All right, no questions? No questions. We have fun?
We can have a discussion.
Let's switch to the demonstration session. That will be fun to reply.
So how are we gonna do that, like one by one or like?
One by one.
Okay, so should we grab lunch while we can listen to the demonstration? How do you want to?
Since your lunch already here already and you can.
Grab
Yeah,
and then
grab
ask.
lunch and
Let's do it together.
Yeah.
Let's do it together, lunch. No,
For demonstration, it'll be one by one.
Yeah, one by one, what I'm saying is grab the line.
My AI is available.
Yeah, lunch and the section, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so first person is gonna be Brandon, right? So Brandon, you have some setup or how do you want to do it?
I was just expressing, my AI agent failed me. Okay, it did not prep me for this part of. So I will yield my time to the gentleman from Hazen and Sawyer. And if anybody wants to talk to me afterwards, I will be there.
Okay, so you have some presentation or?
That'll help.
Yes, please, grab your lunch and then sit down, then we will,
That works. I'm gonna have to keep mine at an hour.
Good.
You want to connect your.
Yes.
Yeah.
You take it, all you graduate, it's awesome. I'll be, yeah. Go through with easy guitars. And right. It's not gonna, this week, you get guitar unless it's really made of piano or something. That's so proud. Yes, like 4 or 5 something, but yours.
He has that?
I don't need to worry.
It'll be an awesome.
That's good.
So when you do
Be asking. The son, some BS issue to go visit something. Well, then he's. This,
Nice, very nice.
If somebody wants that.
We are all going through.
Hey, GIS, we used to GIS, you can't get it wrong.
Good, how are you? It's been a while.
There are people who are dedicated. Finding reason, finding reason.
Many interactions. Different night. If somebody goes on that, it's just already that high, it's amazing. You know, it's three. That's not very strange.
They won't. Yeah. Yeah, sneak out. Yeah.
Otherwise, they have.
You, which one, horizontal, vertical?
Monday night. This is what's
One time I came here for a day, and I got to walk in, and I saw this box during cities. Like, oh,
That's when you wanna have the students. That's the one you wanna have.
I wonder how, did I dismiss them? Have they been here?
Can I do, I guarantee I will be sick tomorrow. Right. I have to have.
Busy Merkel.
But it's one thing that they
Eating earlier.
The old day instead of great. Things I started 7, but I think they call me around 8. Yes. Buying on snacks and. Yeah, but what's the problem? There was an accident.
On the plate.
So if you get to the third mark, that was the case. And then they turn back, we'll talk it way.
No, you cannot.
How about you?
I think it's.
Or.
No,
I will.
You found
It's working.
that's so.
When I got a project. You went direct.
Oh, I.
So next, so you've seen the post about, you know, my work.
So. I just know January, right?
Person. And then my team was spread out. So she would come in.
So we set up like a really assessment.
I don't know, when.
And they were the best things ever.
It was easy to find out. I can just like.
You should try. I can't tell you exactly.
In Miami and Broward for like.
I don't know.
The job, I like to stay. Advisory meeting.
We know, I know. You're like nothing, you're still good. But you can say that you're a classmate or something.
Everybody wants to.
29.
It's on both. Yeah. Don't want to buy your pen. Yeah. They already have. Actually, I'm right. You took it.
After the report, thank you. So Dr. Kaiser, please,
There, so that's why we have these like.
Inside. Chicken with the roast beef.
Alright, while we all enjoy our lunch, let's get this started as well. The next session, demonstration. So we have Joseph with the Hazen and Sawyer. He's our alumni, as he has said, like he graduated from our department, and Dr. Sue was his advisor. Yeah, and he worked on watershed project with all of us, and is one of our best students we had. And he's gonna give the stuff he does for us and excited.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dr. Stu reached out to me that there's going to be a workshop, I think last week or last 2 weeks. I was like, I think during our curriculum, there was a tool that which is being used here in South Florida, but I never heard of it until I got into Hazen and Sawyer. So I was like, okay, let me just talk about it. It's Mike C. So Mike She, Mike Hydro, Mike Plus from DHI. It has a free license for students. So each student can have a license and learn how to use it before getting into the industry. Okay, so I'll be talking about using Mike Plus and Mike She for integrated modeling, that is combining groundwater and surface water modeling.
Can I ask you what Mike stands for?
It's just it's just Mike. Thank you. Okay, so why this matters in South Florida? Due to the terrain, that is the flat terrain and high groundwater levels in South Florida, it is of interest that the groundwater influence surface flooding. Therefore, the Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers and some counties rely on the power of Mike C, that is Mike Plus, Mike Hydro, Mike She for hydraulic and hydrological modeling to ascertain that is for flood protection level of service for their structures and also for flood prediction. So today I'll just be talking about how to combine Mike Plus and Mike She for integrated water modeling. And why it is of importance, I would say used by agencies, that is South Florida Water Management, Southwest Florida, Broward County, Army Corps of Engineers, and most of the, I think, private consulting firms use it for H&H modeling. So in H&H modeling, usually one, two, that is, let's say HECRAS will do both the hydrology and the hydraulics, but it hardly combine groundwater. That is where Mike She comes in. So Mike Plus is for the hydraulics. So the canals,
the structure controls due to how sophisticated the hydraulics of the water management districts are. It is very, very important to use a tool that can capture their formulas. So Mike and the districts work together and they give them their structure ratings, which they have used in writing the program. So as Mike works for the hydraulics, she works for the hydrology part, that is the rainfall, infiltration, saturated zone, unsaturated zone, and the two combined gives a realistic representation of South Florida hydrodynamics. So that is why we combine both MIC and MIC class. Okay, so for my demonstration, I'll just open a model that is built in MIC class and coupled in MIC and load the result. The model that I'll be working with is, I'll be using this project as an example, which is the Kissimmee Basin Headwater Revitalization Schedule. So the Kissimmee Basin, which comprises of upper and lower Kissimmee basins, we are trying to rechannelize the Kissimmee River, which is in my map here. So due to constructions in the Kissimmee River, the natural channel has been changed. Therefore, for the past 20 years, the Army Corps and South Florida Water Management District have combined to rechannelize the Kissimmee River back to its natural flow. And to do so, they have scheduled their operations into different stages. And at this stage, they want to see what a new, that is there, going back to the old historic flow path will have on the floodplain. They want to know the impacts of the rechannelizing on the floodplain. And to do so, we are using MIC class to set up a calibration model. So this is an event-based model which is being calibrated to Hurricane Irma in September 2017. So we are calibrating to observe stages and flows. So the district has multiple dates as seen on the map. We have from S59 to S60, S65, which drains into the Lake of Okeechobee. So we have observed flows and stages for each of the structures. We are calibrating the model and we are comparing it with Hurricane Irma flow and stages. So this is gonna be. I'll start with I think I think it's my last story. Yeah, I should have brought my mouse. Okay, so let me just talk about the components here. Yeah, I think internet.
Need to work.
Let me just connect to it. Give me that.
What is it? No longer a student, they're like, oh,
Yeah, it works.
what, you tried?
Yeah.
Ah. This is a secure network, that's why I was thinking.
Hey guys. This is the,
year ago.
yeah, it was.
And you can make money.
It's all your fault, Brian. It's only had 20 minutes. Just said it for this.
Well, if he had his AI set up appropriately, it would have been all right.
Yes, right. Make you fun.
Sorry. Well, I can't on the back. You'll be impressed.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, trying to have two views here. So this is the model domain area. The model has river networks, which has cross sections, structures which include culverts, weirs, bridges, gates, and direct discharges. So each gate is controlled. Each gate has its own dimensions, which DHI already has, but we are operating the model, the calibration based on observed gate openings. Therefore, you have to set up control rooms here, which connects to each of the gates. Let me zoom into S65E. So S65E here is it's a sluice gate with these dimensions. It has a gate height of 13.8 feet here. So each of the gate has a dimension. Each of the gate has observed gate openings during Hurricane Irma. Therefore, we are creating the model to represent September 1st to September 30th, 2017. And due to how complex South Florida water management domain is, I think my class is able to represent all the structural parameters. So you see, we have sensors. Each of the gate has its own sensor, and Mike has created a sensor component which is connected to the gates, and it has actions. So just for illustration purpose, this is my class, and it handles the hydraulics aspect. That is the channels and each component. That is the 1D channel, each component. So coupling this with my sheet, we get the 2D overland and the groundwater flow as well, which is very, very important in South Florida due to the high groundwater levels. So after creating the model in my class, then you go to coupling, groundwater coupling. So once you couple it here, it will interact with the overland and groundwater flows. So this is Mike Shi. Mike Shi has to do with the hydrology aspects. It takes the climate, which is precipitation, ET, land use, and this is where you connect it to the Mike plus hydraulics that you created. So once you connect the two, then you have other hydrology parameters, that is overland. For the overland, you have mannings, detention storage, initial water level, separated flow areas, which is the sub-watersheds within the districts. Then we have unsaturated zone for the soil and saturated zone for the groundwater layers. So once these two are coupled, you can run a complete integrated model. Then from there, you can view your calibration results. And if the calibration results meets requirements, then you can move on to your scenarios, that is scenario runs. So I have results here for this calibration, but the project is still in calibration, so some of the calibration ones look appealing, but this is for 15 minutes illustration. So the core, that is the main idea I'm trying to push here is, I think this software is being used largely by firms or consulting firms in South Florida, but we hardly hear about it in school before we get into the industry. But since it has a free license for students, I think students can capitalize on it and use it to learn what is being done in the real world. If I can say that, yeah. So this, let me move to S65, which is a structure on the Kissimmee Lake. S65. Yeah, so we have observed and simulated. And we have an ME of 0.63, which doesn't meet the requirement. We are required to have an ME of 0.5. ME is the average of the observed minus simulated. So we are required to have an ME of 0.5 for surface water stages, and we are not meeting that. But the tailwater has an ME of 0.08, which meets requirement. But we have to fine-tune to some selected important structures, of which S65 is part. So this is just to show you the capabilities of Mike Plus and Mike Shi in South Florida water modeling. Continue, I think this will be my last background slide. No. Okay. Yeah, so that was just a short illustration of Mike Plus and Mike Shi for integrated modeling. Yeah.
So. Mike Shi, or whatever, is that directly at South Florida where the management was from? Did they develop that?
No. It was developed by EHI.
Into Europe.
Yeah.
Denmark.
Denmark.
Questions to Joseph?
Yeah, so I think if you want to learn, we have the training.dhigo.com. And from that page, you can also access the free licenses for students. Yeah.
Let's thank Joseph. All right. Thank for something we have been waiting for all day.
I'll try to keep mine down to an hour. I know people are at home. Mine's actually really simple, and I apologize, I did not bring enough glasses for everybody, so I know only a few of you can see the virtual survey here that's right next to me right now. Those of you that can see it, okay. Alright, so I'm with Duncan Farnell, which is a Trimble distributor. If you don't know what Trimble navigation is, it is the world's largest surveying equipment company in the world. They were started in the late '70s by a gentleman named Charlie Trimble out of his garage. If you don't know the story, it's pretty cool. He was a Hewlett-Packard employee, and he actually invented GPS. So, show you how times have changed. Hewlett-Packard allowed him to buy that patent for $30,000. So
They just going it over anywhere.
correct. He took a second mortgage out on his house, paid Hewlett-Packard $30,000. He was allowed to patent it in his name and started Trimble Navigation. Today, it's $1 billion corporation. So where am I going with all this is that they have a program. What's that?
We need a garage.
We need a garage. Well, that sort of goes along the lines of Amazon and all these guys that started. They do a program that's called Trimble Universities. There's not many worldwide. And I just want to announce that they have chosen FAU to be one of these Trimble Tech Labs, which has a lot of cool stuff. Primarily the fact that they're donating $135,000 worth of survey gear to the FAU Geomatics, which is virtual. So when I leave here in the next 10 minutes, I'm actually driving to Orlando to get your equipment. Okay, so you will have it hopefully next week.
Then we can all see.
I get to play with it. I get to play with it first. But they also do a lot of other nice things around the community. One of the things they do is they set up during the summer. It's called the Trimble Boot Camp, where they bring in high school students. They'll bring them into FAU. It's about a 2-week class, and they can learn about FAU, but they also learn about surveying. So it's pretty neat. Try to do some local stuff, but I know I really, Brian, and we wanted to have the equipment here today, and it just unfortunately didn't get here fast enough.
It's Friday.
So please give me back the glasses for those of you that do see the equipment, but other than that, that's all I got. Thank you. Okay.
So you want to make the closing remarks,
Yeah.
So the chief. You take it.
So we've already talked about doing, we ended up doing but we monitor the water consumed and we're saying that way, so you were from yes, something that back. That we're going to go find one, do the whole real on it and do that. I hope you all enjoyed the workshop today. We had a panel discussion. I hope that we arranged a longer time for panel discussion because a lot of controversial issues need to be discussed. We learned a lot of new perspective. Panel discussion is supposed to have very hot debate, right? All of us are new. We need to spend more time thinking about what will be the impact of new technology. We don't have a definite answer yet, but we will continue the dialogue in the future. Also, we talk about some other issue, and also we look for new collaborations. For example, Earl have our program providing the equipment, and also Ray Price, Brian, the both guest lecture in the first semester helped the program a lot. And also we look forward future collaboration with UF Geomatics. We can maybe work on some joint proposal to the state Congress. We get get more money to support the geomatics community, especially for education. So a lot of new collaboration can be updated. So if you have any other suggestion, let me know. And also I want to mention a few important person to appreciate. For example, our department leader, Dr. Kaisas, the chair, and the associate chair, Dr. Nagarajan, and also Digna helped to organize this workshop. And also we have the technical support from FAU IT department. Mark is sitting on the back. So thanks everybody coming here to attend the workshop. Hope that we can have another workshop next year. Okay, thanks everybody.
So that, I'll give
Maybe early next week.
I know, but.
I will share with you the picture and also the video recording.
Okay,
Stop it after.
At the top.
It's gonna be, is it on YouTube already?